Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if baby Luffy and female Ace get adopted by Whitebeard? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the himmelblu for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. When the captain's haki sensed a fast approaching threat from his right, he glanced in that direction and saw that, and had managed to get her hands on an axe. She was a strong-willed and stubborn woman, but still, while the captain didn't mind the attempts on his life as she would never be able to do it, he still felt slightly annoyed that she was attacking him from behind. That was a low blow. The woman was making her usual attack scream, easily revealing her intentions and allowing her opponent ample time to counter it. They had picked up this young woman, and, a couple of weeks ago, they had run into her at an island. The moment she noticed their presence, she proceeded to attack them. The whole time she was holding a bundle of sheets, or blankets, which was odd. The woman was a strong fighter, even having a devil fruit, the Maranomi. But even though she was strong, the captain was stronger, accidentally knocked the woman out. He had only meant to knock her down, so that she would calm down, and he could at least speak to her. It was then that they found out what she had been holding. It was a baby, wrapped in a blanket inside a baby sling. The woman had been quietly protective of it during the fight, but it still left him feeling annoyed. No child, or baby, should be out at sea, especially one that couldn't be older than a few months. 6, if Marco's guess was right. The rest of the woman's crew, a ragtag group of various types of misfits, said that the baby belonged to the woman, so they would not take it with them if they were to be taken on board the Moby 2. It was easier to separate them, and he was interested in finding out more about this woman, and why she had a baby with her. The woman, looked to be around 17 years old, just a child herself, even though she was taking care of a baby. Marco had said that the baby seemed healthy. The woman had been taking care of it, so he saw no issue in letting the woman keep it, until they knew more about the situation. If she had stolen a child for ransom, as he knew some pirates do, they would handle it later when they docked at the next island. They would have to remain calm until then. If they took the child, the woman could just torch the ship. As long as she continued to care for the child correctly, they would just have to let it weren't happy. But the baby didn't appear to be in any danger, nor was he being mistreated by the woman. That had been almost 3 weeks ago. Since then, the woman has been consistently attempting to take his head. She had also taken over an old storage room and had stolen a bed, but they saw no harm in it. She needed a room and something to sleep on. When the woman wasn't out trying to kill him, she was nowhere to be found, most likely in her room. What had them worried was how silent the baby was, but Thatch said that he and the chefs had seen him at times, when the woman came to take food, and he looked fine. If that changed, then they would interfere. They formulate a plan on how to place the woman in Seastone, if it came to that. As the woman stood back up, she moved to charge at him again. And the captain, with a small motion, lifted his hand and flicked the woman away, making her land on the deck again. She gave an angry look towards him, moving her long, hip-length hair away from her face. It was amazing how she kept it as maintained and out of the way as she did, and was a beautiful young lady, but she was nowhere near as strong as him. And gave a small growl. Before charging again, the captain used a bit more force to swat her away this time. She needed to learn that attacking from behind was unacceptable. He would mention it later, but when the woman went farther away than he had anticipated, hitting the railing hard, he felt a bit of regret. He hadn't meant to hurt her. But when a snapping sound was heard, he could only look at and with dread as the railing gave out, causing her to plummet into the water below with a splash. Before the captain could think of ordering someone to get her, Nemur was already over the railing, the man thankfully reacting quickly, grabbing the woman before she would sink and drown. Marco and Thatch threw the ladder over for Namur to climb, and when he was close to the top, the captain could hear him speak. "She's out. Breathing, but labored." That wasn't good. She might have fallen unconscious from her collision with the railing, although it had cracked and given way. It was made from Adam's wood, it takes a lot to damage it. And the fall to the ocean wouldn't have helped. He felt bad for this. He had never meant to hurt the woman. Marco sent Jens to warn the infirmary that they have a patient on the way, hopefully giving Bay time to prepare, while commanding Rikuyo to carry her there, so that Namur could dry off. It was good that Marco was calm and level-headed, managing to keep a bored expression through anything. It was one of the reasons he was given the role of first mate, and commander of the 1st Division. The captain would be sure to apologize to the woman later, when she was cleared to leave the infirmary. He could see a small disapproving look from Marco, but the first commander knew he didn't mean for it to happen, but at the same time, he should have had more control than that. When Rakuyo came back a bit later, he said Whiskey was treating the woman as Bay was performing dental surgery, nothing serious. And was fine, she just got knocked out and needed to wake up. It was about an hour later that Paul came to him, looking confused. Pops? There is a baby crying, it's by the south side of the deck. The captain blinked, trying to understand how he had forgotten about the baby. Its name was Luffy if he remembered right. As he was on his way to tell Rakuyo, the closest commander, to pick up the baby and make sure he is fine, Kent came walking with the baby, who was crying loudly. Paul told him how he and Kent had found him but didn't really know what to do, as they haven't any experience with children, let alone babies. Not that he knew either. Thatch had thankfully come over and said the baby was most likely hungry, and usually came to the galley at this time, before putting him down for a nap. When the baby was handed to him, the chef gave the baby something to bite, a plastic thing which calmed the baby, though he was still cry, before heading to the galley to prepare food, the captain joining him as he wanted to make sure the baby was fine. But when they got into the galley and Thatch put the baby down in a small, makeshift chair made from planks and some spare chef's jackets, the baby instantly started crying loudly again. The chef put some milk on the stove to warm up, telling them that they had actually a bit of baby formula. Bay had said it was always smart to have some just in case, which it was. But when the chef tried to calm the baby, nothing seemed to work. The baby's cries turned to wails which grew louder and louder as his distress continued. They couldn't seem to get him to stop. All of them were starting to get more and more on edge, not sure if anything was wrong with the baby, or if he was just hungry. Hey! Clap your hands! Peek-boo! Thatch looked floored as he couldn't get the small child to stop crying. The baby seemed almost scared. They had never heard the baby, Luffy, cry. So, he wondered what Anne was doing to keep him so happy and content. Either that, or she managed to keep the sound from being too loud, somehow. Come on, your milk will be warm soon. When the milk was finally ready, Thatch looking to be at his wit's end. And he had to agree too, a baby's cries were loud and tiring, especially since they had never dealt with babies, and didn't know if something was wrong with Luffy. Thatch put the milk into a bottle and tried to feed the baby, to which said baby only seemed to scream more, pushing the bottle away, making it fall to the ground. No! Please! Go to sleep! Stop crying! Thatch looked like he was about to lose it, along with a few others who were trying to help, making funny faces or singing children's songs. Nothing worked. The captain had no idea what to do either. Just as Thatch was about to order someone to make another batch of milk, two hands grabbed the baby, no one having noticed and coming in. She made a hushing sounds to the baby, before she started singing. She works the nights by the water. She's gone astray, so far away, from her father's daughter. She just wants a life for her baby, all on her own, no one will come. She's got to save him. The woman grabbed a bottle while she sang, giving a smile to the baby, who gradually stopped crying. She tells him, "Oh, love, no one's ever gonna hurt you, love. I'm gonna give you all of my love. Nobody matters like you." She tells him, "Your life ain't gonna be nothing like my life. You're gonna grow and have a good life. I'm gonna do what I've got to do." The captain blinked as he heard the lyrics, listening as the woman hummed a bit as she grabbed the milk, before continuing while she put some milk into the bottle. She found her love, way too early. They said too young, what are you thinking? They told the truth, she chose to use her heart and keep him. Now she got a 1-year-old, trying to keep him warm. Trying to keep out the cold. When he looks in her eyes, he doesn't know he is safe. When she says, "Oh love, no one's ever gonna hurt you, love. I'm gonna give you all of my love. Nobody matters like you." Luffy had stopped crying by now, giving a small laugh and smile when it looked at him as she sang the last part, and made a nuzzling motion with her face. She then snapped her fingers a bit as she heated the milk in the bottle for a few seconds, continuing the song. "So, rockabye baby, rockabye. I'm gonna rock you. Rockabye baby, don't you cry. Somebody's got you. Rockabye baby, rockabye. I'm gonna rock you. Rockabye baby, don't you cry. I'm gonna rock you." She then grabbed the milk and gave it to the baby, who drank it with his eyes looking at and who hummed to the tune she just sang. She softly rocking her arms, giving the kid on his forehead, his eyes slowly lowering, before she starting to head out, still humming. When she was out, everyone had a look of shock. Not only because she seemed to care for the baby as they thought she didn't, but the song. Did started Thatch, did you all hear and see that? They nodded, a few answering verbally. Is there any way Luffy is her baby? Isa asked, looking utterly shocked. There was a small possibility, and was only 17, almost 18, meaning she would have gotten pregnant when she was 15 or 16. Very few became pregnant that early, not even close. It was frowned upon. That couldn't be easy, especially if she was alone, which it seemed like she was. Maybe that was why she was trying to take his head, to get a name for herself, so people would stay away from her and her baby. She had gathered a crew, challenged, and defeated many people, according to the newspaper. It explained all of her actions, made sense of why someone would become a pirate on the Grand Line, even taking a baby with them. It made much more sense. Or, another possibility Marco mentioned, was that Anne had just been protecting her baby. Technically, they had been the ones to approach her. She had arrived on the island before. They were notorious pirates, with a reputation. The newspaper don't always paint the best picture of them, but either way, they would let the woman be for a bit, so they could let this new information sink in. This entire situation has gotten a lot more complicated. Marco gave a sigh. After the whole railing accident a few days prior, resulting in the woman going overboard, they haven't seen, or heard, their new traveling companion, or the baby. They had decided to give the woman some space, in case they had been wrong, resenting the woman for no reason, thinking she had a kidnapped baby. Marco didn't know what was true, but it seemed like the situation more complex than they had imagined. The first commander was now on his way to the storage room the woman was currently using. Thatch had approached him saying that he hadn't seen either of them yet. It was almost 9 a.m. now. According to the chef, and would usually come to the galley between 7:30 to 8 a.m., she was never this late in getting food for Luffy, so he was worried. And Marco had to agree, it was a bit out of character. The woman seemed to want to keep the baby healthy and happy. He wanted to make sure everything was fine. When he had spoken with the men on night watch, as there had been a storm, Jens, who had watch of the south side of the ship, had mentioned that he had heard the baby crying all night. When Jens had gone to close to the door of the room to investigate, he had heard and trying to comfort the baby, so he had left, as the baby wasn't alone. When he stood outside her door, Marco gave a light knock, carefully opening it when he hadn't heard a response. If Luffy had been up most of the night, then they should both be inside. When the room became visible, he felt slightly shocked. The room hadn't changed much since Anne had began using it. He had expected more things to be inside for herself and the baby, but other than a bed, and a few of the baby's things placed upon the desk, there was hardly anything. Anne was asleep in her bed, her head resting on a thin pillow, which looked rather uncomfortable. The bigger, softer-looking pillow had been placed at the edge of the bed, with Luffy sleeping safely between Anne and the pillow, likely so that he wouldn't fall to the floor. Didn't she have a crib or anything? It was clear she didn't have much, seeing as she stole a few things from them, like spare or worn-out clothing. Damn, they should have realized it earlier. They should have. They really hadn't wanted to help the woman out, all of them thinking the worst of her. A few had been somewhat kind with her, but he knew many, even himself, had been a bit brash because she had a baby, none of them liking child kidnappers. If the baby was her, as they now suspected, her only goal has been to protect her baby. He was about to head out again, letting the two sleep, when Luffy made some noises, sounding uncomfortable. The woman didn't stir, most likely tired from being awake the entire night. After a moment of the noise continuing, Marco came to a decision. He walked into the room, lifting the waking child, seeing that he was in a torn shirt, which was way too big for him. He gave a small hushing and cooing sound as he lifted the baby and walked out of the room, closing the door carefully, so that the tired woman could continue to rest. He was sure she must be needing it. When he got out on the main deck close to where Pops had his chair, he walked over to Jozu, needing to ask him something. As he had the baby with him, he could see a few looking at him weirdly, before Isa walked up to him, looking startled. She let you have her kid? Marco shook his head. No, Iwa. She's asleep. Jens told me Luffy cried all night keeping her up. She needs to sleep. Isa blinked at that. Poor woman. She's so young to be dealing with this on her own. Tell me if you need any help. Marco nodded, walking over to Jozu. Jozu, how long would it take you to build a crib? The man frowned a bit. Not long. A few hours. Why? That was good to hear. Jozu was the best at wood construction, which was why he was their shipwright. It doesn't seem like and has one, so he sleeps in the bed, and using her own pillow to keep him safe, Yual. Everyone seemed shocked at that, Jozu nodding. I could probably make one in an hour, but I'll use a bit more time to make it a better one. That sounded perfect. Sounds good. We might also need to use a bit of money to buy him some clothes and other items. He doesn't seem to have much. They had mentioned it at times, noticing he used the same worn-out clothing, so they weren't surprised by it, just a bit saddened that the woman hadn't asked for anything. She had been here for almost a month now. Why did she never ask for help? Asked Haruta, looking at the baby, who was still half asleep, the 16th commander looking worried. Marco didn't know why, but he had an idea. I think she has been mostly alone whilst raising him, and she might think she has no one here she can lean on for support, Yual. That made the most sense to him at least, and by the looks coming from the rest of them, they agreed. Rikuyo spoke next. What about her room? I know it was an abandoned closet before. But has anyone cleaned it? It can't be good for either of them. That was true, and it was something he couldn't really answer. I don't know. I can tell her that we will clean out when she wakes up, and then we can give her the crib when it's finished, Yual. That sounded like a good idea, and everyone agreed. After they had finished discussing things, everyone wanted to see the baby. People were never allowed close enough to properly see him before. After he had given Luffy some milk, the baby seeming really hungry, everyone wanted another chance to see him again. Even Pops. Luffy looking at the man with big eyes, and when the man said, "Hi there, little one," the baby gave a sound of happiness, as he sucked on his own fingers. The baby was really cute, especially when he wasn't crying. After a little while, most leaving to do their own things, someone from his division came and said they needed his help. Marco gave a sigh as he asked more on what the issue was, hoping to send someone else as he was currently watching Luffy. He gave another sigh internally as that didn't seem like a possibility. Rikuyo, started the first commander, could you watch Luffy, Yual? The man nodded and took the baby, who looked at him, seeming unhappy with change, before Marco headed after his division member. He was sure Rikuyo could watch the baby, as he had some experience with children, and gave a satisfied sigh as she woke up, not having slept this well for a long while. Luffy always woke her up early, and a few times throughout the night, needing food or comfort. She moved a hand out a bit, frowning when she felt nothing. Luffy never slept too far away from her. When she moved her hand a little further away, it hit the pillow which kept Luffy away from the edge of the bed. She instantly opened her eyes in horror as she sat up. When she was up, there was no sign of him. She felt her heart start to race as she leapt out of bed, checking the floor, the bed, everywhere she could think of. When she found nothing, she moved her hands to her face, letting out a panicked scream. She had lost Luffy. Luffy was gone. Where could he be? When she heard a sound, she was reminded of where she was. She hid her panic as she walked out. The ING pirates had probably taken her baby. Marco gave a sigh as he finally finished helping his division, it taking a couple of hours. When he got out on deck, he only got a few steps when a small scream could be heard, causing him to frown. What was that? The ones around him didn't have an answer either, and a few seconds later, a door was banged open and a familiar voice yelled, "Where is Luffy?" Well, the woman had woken up. He gave a small wave to the others as he walked towards the woman, who was standing in front of the door to her room. She looked annoyed, which was understandable. "It's fine, Yual. We have him." The woman turned to him, Marco seeing something in her eye that wasn't annoyance. "I knew it. Where is he?" Marco kept his calm demeanor. "Right now, with Rikuyo. I had him, but I was needed. I heard he kept you up all night, and thought you could use some more sleep. Come, I'll take you to him." The woman nodded, walking in a huff beside him as they headed to the main deck where he had left Luffy with Rikuyo. When they got there, he gave a frown as they saw the 7th commander, without Luffy. Where was he? "Rikuyo, where is Luffy, Yual?" The other man gave a frown. "What do you mean?" "He disappeared an hour ago. I was sure you came and got him, and just didn't get the chance to tell me." Marco blinked. "What?" The man repeated that he hadn't seen the baby in a while, thinking Marco had taken him. Marco was about to ask more, when he noticed a movement by his side, seeing and moving a shaking hand to her mouth, eyes wide and fearful. Marco needed to figure this out quickly. The woman looked on the verge of a panic attack, which he could completely understand. They were on a boat, and she knew no one, and Luffy, potentially her own baby, was missing. He moved a hand to her shoulder, giving a reassuring look. "It's okay, he can't be far away, we'll find him, I promise." And tried to keep her composure. "Yeah, because he just got up and walked away. It's not as though someone lost might be a lost Luffy." Yep, it was her baby, she basically just admitted it. "Come, I'll help you look, Iwa." The woman gave a stiff nod, hands still shaking, but trying to keep herself calm. After half an hour, they weren't any closer to finding Luffy. Woman was barely keep it together. Everyone was concerned, especially Pops, and joining in on the search. It was when a man from the 4th Division, Peter, came in sight, that they got a lead and who might know his whereabouts. "Oh, the baby? I saw him with Thatch in the galley a while ago." That was something, better than nothing. Hopefully, Luffy would still be with him. Marco heading there with and who looked more and more on edge by each passing minute. When they got to the galley, Marco walked into the kitchen, and close behind him, Marco felt a relieved breath leave him as Luffy sat on the counter in a makeshift chair with Isa behind him. Thatch was standing in front of the stove, making something, possibly dinner. When he was about to tell and Luffy was here, he didn't get a word out as she walked in and lifted Luffy with shaking hands, jing him tightly as a few tears fell. "Oh God, you're fine. I found you, you're fine? You're fine." The woman looked way out of it, still shaking, she was so relieved. The two who were in the kitchen looked shocked and guilty, them realizing that they had caused this distress. Marco gave them both a stern look, a promise of a lecture later. They couldn't just grab a child like that. When Anne managed to gather herself, drying her tears away, she held Luffy a bit away as he looked at him. "Are you okay?" The baby gave a happy sound, clearly being glad to see her. "Want to head back to our room?" Marco took a step forward. You can, but if we could maybe clear all the stuff out of there first? We realized it hasn't been cleaned yet. I'm sure it's a bit dirty, which can't be good for a young child." The woman get her baby close again, making him speak again. "You can stay here, or out on deck, we can handle the cleaning. I'm sure Thatch won't mind gathering a few crew members together to get it done quickly, right, you all?" The chef gave a small nod, knowing that he was in trouble, but he needed to do this, to make up for his mistake. It was the least he could do. Whilst the chef walked past him, and still had her back to him, allowing Marco the time to whisper something to Thatch, he let Thatch know that after they were done cleaning the room, they had a surprise for the women and they could all properly apologize then. When the chef was gone, the woman sat down at the table, placing the baby on her lap and making some silly faces, which made Luffy laugh. After a few minutes, the baby made some unhappy noises, causing Anne to make a small face. "Oh no. Not that. Want to hear a song?" Luffy made a small unhappy sound again, which Anne hummed to, before she started singing. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy, when skies are gray." The baby instantly brightened up as he laughed, and continuing with a smile. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away." And hummed a bit once she was done, jumping down and heading to the fridge, taking a banana out. She then headed back to the table, jumping onto it, before opening it. She then took a small bite of it, before offering it to Luffy, who ate it with a little effort but clearly enjoying it. As she took another small bite and handed the bit to Luffy, he didn't open his mouth, and just ate it herself. The next small bite she gave to the child, who ate it with a smile, and smiling at the baby. When she started to repeat the cycle, Thatch came in. "All taken care of, you can probably go back in the room again in an hour." That was good, and when the chef saw Anne and Luffy, he blinked, seeing and dropping the small piece to her hand and giving it to Luffy. "Wait, can he eat food?" The woman nodded, biting off another piece. "Yeah, when they are above 6 months, they can eat mushy things. Banana is the only thing they can just eat without mashing it before." The chef nodded, not seeming to know that. This got Marco thinking. "How old is Luffy, you all?" The woman hummed, eating a piece that Luffy didn't want. "He is 7 months and 2 weeks. That was good to know. That means that she had gotten pregnant when she was around 15 or 16. giving birth when she was either 16 or 17. That was young. That couldn't be easy for the woman. After about an hour later, after Anne and Luffy had finished eating the banana and were just relaxing, Luffy became tired, letting out a yawn. "You tired, Lou?" asked Anne. Luffy only answered with another yawn. And gave a chuckle, looking at the baby. "Do you think we can head back to our room now?" Marco gave a look to the clock, him seeing that an hour had passed. Thatch had said an hour, which was likely the maximum time it would take. "You most likely can, you are. I'll join you and we can see if they've finished." The woman nodded, heading out. As Marco headed after her, he spoke. "Be sure to ask Haruta how it's going if you see her." He had probably asked her to help, but it also meant she'd know if the surprise was ready yet. When they got out on deck, Luffy seemed to become more tired, letting out noises, seeming to be in discomfort. When the woman's room was in sight, he saw Haruta and gave a look, to which the woman nodded too. That meant it was all ready. When they were close, Haruta and Jozu fell into step, most likely wanting to see her reaction. When they were in front of the door, he spoke before and could open it. "Before you go in, we have a small surprise in there, wa?" The woman seemed a bit hesitant at that, but she nodded and opened the door carefully. When the door was opened, and stopped in her tracks as she seemed in shock. The room was spotless now, smelling fresh too, with clean bedsheets, a new set of pillows and blankets. But what had in moving into the room was the light blue and red crib beside her bed, with his own pillow and blankets inside. When she was next to it and touched it, causing it to rock, she seemed emotional, even picking up the small plush whale. After looking at it, she looked at them with blank eyes. "Is this for us?" Marco nodded. "Yes, you are. I noticed you didn't have something for Luffy to sleep in, so Jozu made one. I hope you like it," and nodded, looking the crib over again. "Oh God." She was clearly at a loss for words, which made him glad that she liked it, but also confirming that she doesn't have anyone to help her. But they would change that, and moved to sit down on her bed, bringing the crib closer to her. "I don't know what to say." Marco gave a smile. "There's nothing for you to say. We just wanted to help out, and to say sorry for the thing earlier." The woman nodded, still seeming to be shocked. Yeah? Thank you, really? This is amazing." Marco gave a smile. "That's all we could ask for. We want you to be happy here too, with Luffy you are. Come get any of us if you ever need anything." The woman nodded, turning to look at the crib again, rocking it. Marco took that as their cue to leave, closing the door after him, giving a look to Jozu. "The crib looked amazing, you all. Really good work." The man nodded. "Nothing big. Got a few to help out, making it so that the crib will rock smoothly." Marco would be sure to thank them too. He then went to update Pops on everything that had happened, him being happy with the fact that she now has a crib, a clean room, and fresh, new bedsheets for herself and Luffy. He did give a frown when he said that Aizu, or Thatch, most likely the latter, had taken the kid without telling anyone, making the woman scared for Luffy's well-being as she couldn't find her son. Also, informing him that she had almost said her baby. They would make sure she was happy here. Both Pops and himself agreed on that, and gave a breath, still not sure if this was real. Had she really gotten a crib? A beautiful rocking crib with pillows, blankets, a mattress, and a plushie? She has noticed that they had given her new bedsheets too, but that wasn't important. Luffy was the priority. His well-being and happiness was the most important thing to her. After looking everything over again, she looked at Luffy. "Want to try it out?" The little boy just gave a yawn, which she took as a yes. She made a space for the little boy, taking the blanket out and placing the black-haired kid in the crib, his head on the pillow, before draping the blanket over him and tucking it in. Luffy gave a stretch, clearly happy that he was finally put down, closing his eyes and making some noises as his tongue smacked as he relaxed and yawned. And caressed Luffy's head as she gave a smile on his forehead. She loved Luffy with all her heart, never wanting to lose him. Luffy was the cutest little angel in the entire world. Luffy fell asleep on his back with his arms out and by his head, making and chuckle. He still seemed to be tired after his all-nighter, and she had to say she was a bit too, even if she had slept a bit longer. She gave a small breath as she moved the small plush whale to lay on Luffy's arm, resting against his chest. This was all perfect. She laid down in her bed, giving a breath at how amazing the bed felt now. Had she really gotten a new blanket and pillows? She didn't know what to do with all of this, and it smelled so good now, no longer musty. When she had made herself comfortable, she moved a hand out and held the crib, rocking it as she relaxed under her blanket. She may embody the element of fire, and no longer felt cold, thanks to her eating the Mara Maranomi, but she still liked to lie under a blanket. It relaxed her. She opened her eyes a bit and looked at the rocking crib, seeing her child in it, with his new pillows and sheets, and even the cute little plushie. She's always wanted a plushie for Luffy. This felt perfect. Maybe it wasn't too bad here, and gave a breath, feeling stressed as Luffy wouldn't calm down. Things have been a bit different the last few weeks, the pirates not looking at her with disdain. They were even trying to help and make sure the food was ready at Luffy's feeding times, telling her if the weather was taking a turn for the worst, and generally being kind to her and offering her smiles. She wondered what had caused this sudden change of heart. She hoped it was sincere, and not a ploy. She had figured that some of their kindness and offers to help were genuine. At the very least Marco, the first commander, Aizu, the 16th commander, the captain, Whitebeard, Thatch, the 4th commander and head chef, and Jozu, the 3rd commander. Not that she needed their help. Luffy was hers and only she could protect him. She still wasn't sure if she could actually trust the pirates, or not. Their sudden change was a little strange, but Luffy had never acted like this before, making her feel more and more on edge. What if something was wrong with him? What if he was sick? No, she had made sure to keep Luffy warm and safe and fed. She had tried to give him food, milk, put him to sleep, and now just the rocking and singing. She just needs to try everything again. She may have forgotten to do something. And rocked her arms while singing to him, doing her best to comfort and hopefully to calm Luffy down, but nothing seemed to be working. She didn't know what to do. Maybe something really was wrong. Luffy has never been seriously ill before, just the occasional stomach aches, nothing unusual. His face was a little red in the face from crying, but feeling his forehead, there was no signs of a fever. She had tried to burp him too, with no success. She was at an absolute loss. She had no idea what to trying for another half hour to calm Luffy down with no success. After trying for another half an hour to calm Luffy down with no success, she was at her wit's end, with no other ideas of what could be wrong with him. She got up and headed towards the one person she thought could help. Hoping that her earlier thought of their, hopefully, genuine kindness were true, Marco sat in the galley with a few others, lunch having finished a little while ago. It's nice to relax and taking a little time to chat with members of the crew. Thatch, Aizu, Haruda, and Rikuyo, along with some members from the different division, were currently still inside. It had been a rough night, filled with serious thunder and lightning around them, followed by a snowstorm afterwards, which thankfully stopped a few hours ago. After a while, they heard sound of crying, and not long after, the door opened as and came in with Luffy. They really didn't often hear Luffy cry, especially if he was with N, so this was rare. And seemed to be a little stressed out. Just as Marco was about to ask if anything was wrong, and spoke. "I need your help, Marco. I have no idea what's wrong. He won't stop crying." Marco frowned, standing up and heading over to N. "Has anything happened, you all?" And shook her head, looking on edge. "And no. He's been like this since I woke up. He's never been like this, not even when he's been sick." That was worrisome. Marco moved a hand to Luffy's forehead, before moving his hand to his back, and under his shirt. When N looked at him in question and worry, he spoke. "When children and babies have a fever, you often feel it better on their backs. Thankfully, he doesn't have a fever, you all." And gave a nod, doing her best to comfort Luffy again with sounds as he cried, nothing working. This was worrisome. He moved a hand to the distraught woman's back. "Come, let's head to Bay, our doctor. She can help you all." And gave a nod, looking to be really worried and on edge, which Marco understood. He hoped Bay could give and some advice and information which can help. They headed to the infirmary at quick pace. When they got to the infirmary, he spotted Whiskey. "Could you please get Bay, you all?" The woman nodded and headed to get the doctor. As the nurse did this, and had moved to sit on an empty bed, moving Luffy so that can sit on her lap, doing her best to comfort him, Marco moved to stand beside the woman, having a hand on her shoulder to comfort, hoping it would help decrease her distress at not knowing what was wrong with her son. A minute later, a door opened and Bay came out, frowning when she saw Luffy in Anne's arms. Who is this? Marco gave a small sigh, now realizing Luffy has never been in here before, but Bay had been in surgery at the time and probably hadn't been able to look at the woman. This is Luffy, Yua. He's about 8 months old. Something is wrong with him. The doctor nodded as she walked over, crouching down and looking at the baby while Anne held it. What is wrong with him? And gave a small sniff. I don't know. He woke up like this. I can't calm him, he doesn't have a fever. He doesn't seem to want any milk or soft food, doesn't need to be changed, or winded either. He's never been like this. Bay gave a frown as she looked over the baby, touching Luffy and using different equipment to give him a quick checkup, including his eyes, nose, throat, heart, and lung. All the while, she asked some general question about his well-being and daily routine, and answered them all in detail, showing she really paid attention to what Luffy did and his needs. When Bay had looked the baby over, she moved to one of the cabinets, taking a few things out as she spoke. He's fine, there's nothing seriously wrong. But there has been a change in air pressure due to the weather we're currently experiencing. This pressure change is causing him to experience some ear pain. Babies have issues equalizing the pressure, which is why he's in distress. Massaging around the ears can help equalize their ears, something you should have been informed about. When she stood in front of them, Bay had a small oral syringe, filled with something. This is an anti-inflammatory, which should ease the worst of it. There is another treatment which could help him adapt to the change. Do I have your permission to proceed? The woman nodded, looking to be close to breaking down. Why, yeah. I would like that. I don't want him to be in pain. The doctor nodded, crouching down and looking at the baby, showing the needleless syringe. This is going to taste sweet, so no need to be afraid. The doctor then moved to place it in the baby's mouth and injected the content. Bay then stood up. To give the small treatment, it may be easier to do so in a clean and sterile areas. The less people, the better. It may be best if you staged here as well. But if you're adamant to come, then that is understandable. The woman gave a small nod, before giving aid to Luffy's head. When Bay lifted the crying baby, Luffy continued to look at and as he was carried away. It was difficult to tell as the little boy was still crying due to the pressure build up in his ears. But Marco had the feeling that the baby got more upset when he was taken away from her. When Bay was through the door, and moved her head into her hands, giving a small choked sob, obviously being overwhelmed. Marco moved to stroke her back, hoping to comfort her. It's fine, Yua. Luffy will be to his normal, happy self again. And shook her head, lifting it so that she could wipe her tears, and move the hair from around her face. It's not that. I didn't know that I needed to help him adapt to the pressure in his ears. But I should have. He wouldn't be in pain, or at least not as badly as this, if I had treated it quickly. He's in pain due to my incompetence. I'm awful. Oh, so that was what she felt. Marco moved to sit down beside Anne. No, you're not, Iwa. You just didn't know about this. You've probably never been this far into the new world before. The pressure can change rapidly. I didn't know that babies needed help to adapt to it either. You did what you could, and when you didn't know what to do, you asked for help, Iwa. And I heard you answer all the questions Bay asked, in detail. You know everything about Luffy. You know more about your child than most people, even other mothers. You're amazing. The woman nodded, looking at him with red eyes, a few stray tears still falling down her cheeks. Thank you, I needed that. Marco shook his head. It's nothing, and I meant it. You really are amazing. Anne nodded, drying her tears a bit. Marco gave a sigh mentally, needing to ask and thinking it fits now. I need to ask, but you don't need to answer, Yua. Is Luffy your son? He have wanted to ask since the idea that it might be her child came to light, but never finding a time that fit, and looked at him for a few seconds as if deciding if she should tell or not, moving her long hair over her left shoulder, before she gave a small nod. Why, yeah, he is. People always look down at us when I tell. Marco could see that, but at the same time, he couldn't. You are amazing, Yua. You couldn't have been more than 15 or 16 when you got pregnant, still a child yourself when you gave birth. I can't imagine how hard it must have been, how much you had to fight, Yua. We will never look down at you for that, but look up at you, Yua, and gave a small laugh, mixed with a half sob as she was still upset. You don't even know half of it. The only reason I am a wanted pirate, as they say, is since I needed to get away from my island, and I did so in a boat. I only protected my baby, not to be a pirate. It just happened." Marco gave a small chuckle. "The Marines are like that. If you fight them, you are instantly a pirate, you all. You are strong though, more than the general pirates around, even more so than the ones on this ship aside from us commanders and Pops. And that itself is an amazing feat," and gave a small sniff, drying her face. "Maybe. It feels good, and weird to not be looked down upon for once." Marco would be sure to tell this to the others, that she was often looked down at her for having a baby. They thought it to be amazing, how she managed it, especially as they had thought him to be her baby, which it was. "We will never look down at you for this, we think the opposite, you all. As I have said before, never be afraid to come to any of us with any concern or anything like that, or just to speak. We can even watch Luffy if you need or want a break or something." And gave a nod, not answering it. Marco was sure she just wouldn't let them watch her baby this fast, he just wanted to mention it. They sat mostly in silence after that, chatting about small things now and then, before the door opened and Bay came out with a sleeping Luffy. And stood up and walked over, taking the sleeping child. "Here," started Bay, "he is fine, and the mixture, as well as the treatment, made him a bit drowsy. He is fine, and this is nothing to be worried about. You should massage around his ears about 3 times a day for a couple days, before only doing it at morning and evening. I can show you." The young woman nodded and asked to be showed, before she tried, and Bay approved. When it was all done, Bay looked at Anne. "If you need anything or even have a question, don't be afraid to come here. You are amazing at caring for him, never doubt that." And gave a smile at that, looking to be in much higher spirits now, before giving a goodbye and leaving. When the woman was out, Bay looked at him. "He's her son, right?" Marco nodded, making Bay continue. "I have either had one of them for a checkup, which I want, but not now. He is really well taken care of, so she must be an amazing mother to be so young." That was true. She really is, you all. He is her entire world. Bay nodded. "Is the father in the picture?" Marco blinked. "I don't know, you all. Never thought about that. I just got to know it was her son now. I had a feeling, but she told me now. Never heard anything about a father though." Bay gave a nod. "That's fine, it was just if we possibly have him on Moby too. They might. Marco would be sure to ask and later." "And Commander," started Bay when he didn't move, making him turn with a hum that died when she looked at him with a glare. "How can you not tell me when we got a baby on the boat? You must be an idiot to not. I would have been warned about this. Now, get out." Marco gave a nod and hastily walked out to not face more of Bay's wrath. He should have told her. But he felt he managed to bond with Anne, which was good. When Marco was out of the infirmary, he walked to Pop's chair, updating him on what had happened, on how Luffy was a bit ill, or in pain because of the pressure, not mentioning a few things as it wasn't his place. The man felt worried for the two, asking Marco to tell, and he would like to see her if she had the time, but not to force her. She was probably still a bit on edge by all of this. Marco said he would, and he stayed and chatted with his father and those out on deck for a bit, before he went on with his day, telling Anne, when he passed her room, that Pops would like to see her later if she had the time, but that she didn't need to, and said she would maybe do it but would see. Luffy looked to still be out, and Marco knew those mixtures could sit in for a bit, especially if he got more than just the mixture. And did look better though, which was good. He did run into a few who had heard or seen him with Anne and Luffy, asking if things were fine, especially those who had been in the galley. Marco explained the pressure changes here bothered Luffy, and he needed some help with it, which made them glad that the child was fine. Whitebeard sat in his room, having gone in as the night came and it was a bit chilly out. Not that he minded, but knew how angry it made the doctor and Marco when he stayed out. He had decided to not deal with those lectures for now. When it was closing in on 10 at night, there was a knock at his door. He wasn't expecting anyone, most either being in the galley and drinking, or in their rooms. He never minded any company and gave a come in. He was glad when it was Anne, who was carrying a sleeping child. Marco had mentioned the baby was sleepy from a pain mixture. He gave the two a smile. "Anne, daughter. How are you?" The woman gave a small huff. "Don't call me that, and we're fine. Any reason you wanted to see me?" He gave a smile, hoping she would one day accepting he called her daughter. He would love her as a daughter and hoped she would stay. I heard from Marco what had happened with Luffy and wondered how things were. And got a more somber look, looking at Luffy, who was still asleep, or maybe half asleep. We're fine, I've learned now. Marco did mention she blamed herself, her feeling bad she made this happen. She really cares for Luffy. The captain took a breath, before starting to speak again. Years ago, when I first started as a captain, I had no experience. We got to the new world and a winter island. I started piling up, water freezing everywhere as waves hit us. I went on, sure it would just thaw later. Then, a large piece broke off from a roof, injuring one of the few I had as my family, which was small compared to now. He was in the infirmary for over a month, and almost died. I had no idea I needed to rid of the ice before it happened, both to keep accidents like that from happening and to keep the ship from wobbling or turning because of the weight. A couple that I had in my family knew, but they thought I did too and didn't tell, thinking I had control. I had never been close to a winter place. I made a promise to never let that happen again, realizing I needed some help. That was when I made my first commander to help. And gave a small frown. Marco? The captain chuckled. No, Joseph. He's been with us since day one. Marco joined us half a year later. Marco adapted quickly, when he got more okay with us. The captain gave a small sigh. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you is this. You can't know everything, even though others think you might. Even I learned this, and I almost lost the one who got hit. It was bad. It's the reason we have Bay too. Never look down at yourself for not knowing, never be afraid to ask for help. We all need it, even me. I often ask for advice or how to do things as I don't know, and gave a small nod, holding Luffy closer. I still should have known. I didn't mean for Luffy to be in pain. The captain sighed. And I didn't mean for Jonas to be injured by the ice, but it happened. I learned I couldn't know everything and didn't know everything and need help. Everyone does, even you, and gave the tiniest of nods, changing her hold on Luffy as she held him better, him now seeing half-open eyes. He looked tired, which wasn't surprising. He looked at the woman. If I may ask, who are Luffy's parents? Is there a reason he's with you? And looked at him, looking puzzled. Marco didn't tell. The captain shook his head. He only said Luffy was having some issues adapting to the pressure, and that you felt bad for it, blaming yourself. The woman blinked, before looking at Luffy with a thoughtful look. He would get it if she didn't want to tell. After a few seconds, she gave a small sigh, not looking up. He's Luffy is mine, my son. The idea Luffy might be Anne's was getting more and more plausible, and it looked like it was right too. He gave a comforting look to Anne. That's amazing. You must have faced so many hardships being so young, still a child yourself when you gave birth. And gave a small nod. Yeah, I got pregnant at 15, birth at 16. That was young. You are amazing, started the captain. I've seen many mothers, young and old, but never one as young as you. But still, you care for Luffy amazingly. You are one of the most amazing mothers I have seen. And shook her head a bit, still not looking up. Still, I don't know the basic things, making him be in pain. Her voice had changed a bit more raspy. The captain gave a sigh and sighed. Don't think that. You are so amazing, you handle so much responsibility amazingly. I have high respect for you for this, seeing how wonderful you are to Luffy. You are a good mother, doing your best, and no one can ask for more. Luffy is lucky to have you. Whitebeard meant all of it, him needing her to know this, and didn't respond to that, jing Luffy a bit tighter, her head behind his head and downcast. After a few seconds, her shoulders started to shake. And? The woman shook her head, before a sob was heard, the woman falling to her knees as she still held Luffy. Whitebeard stood up and crouched next to the woman. It's okay, daughter. Just relax. The woman shook her head, starting to speak between her tears and sobs. Why are you so kind? I never did anything to deserve it. Everyone hates me since I have a child, looks down at me. Why don't you? I tried to kill you. So that was this was about, the woman being looked down on. Probably why she hid Luffy being her child and being unfriendly. She never had anyone. You are amazing. I would never look down at you for having a child, I do the opposite. And something as trivial as you trying to take my head won't change anything. I have respect for you and like you, on how strong you are. I want you in my family, both you and Luffy. As I said the first day, you can choose to stay here, or leave when that's possible. But I would love for you to stay. The young woman tried to speak, but only managed a sob after the first syllable, leaning a bit forward as she broke down. The captain saw her holding her child tightly, being upset, but also losing her grip at times. He carefully moved a hand and took the child carefully away, placing him safely on the bed, before comforting the woman, who put her hands around herself. You have a burden, and what you do is not easy, and you are an amazing mother. But we want to help. We want to help both you and Luffy, take a bit of it away, help you, we care for you, so just relax. The woman shook a bit as she sobbed, the captain doing his best to comfort her. After a few seconds of him stroking her back, she moved and grasped his jacket, crying into it. The woman was clearly overwhelmed, and all this with the pressure in Luffy's ears didn't help. Poor woman, the captain carefully comforted the woman, and calming down after a few minutes, giving a sniffle as she wiped her face, moving a hand to shift her hair away from her face. She had amazing long black hair, the same color as Luffy. When it seemed more composed and moved her hair over her shoulders, she stood up and lifted Luffy, who he now realized was fidgeting and making some noises. She quickly hushed Luffy and he calmed down, the captain hoping he hadn't done anything wrong by placing the baby alone on the bed. He knew that wasn't safe. The woman gave a sniffle and shook her head somewhat. It's fine. He just doesn't like to lie alone. That made sense, the woman had probably seen his worried look. The captain also had a feeling and didn't like Luffy lying alone. She was always holding the baby or close by. He moved a hand to the woman's shoulder, and still looking upset, but more gathered. This day has been hard, and you too should relax. I also had a small word with Bay after she got mad I was out without my jacket on that she would like you and Luffy in for a checkup. Nothing long or big, just a regular one to know how you're faring. The woman gave a nod and a small sniffle, giving a goodbye to him before she headed out, probably to her room to relax. The captain hoped the woman and her son would join his family. He didn't have a grandchild yet and Luffy was a beautiful baby, with the most amazing mother he had met, and gave a sigh, going into the infirmary with Marco close behind, him wanting to be sure Luffy and she got a checkup, as it was standard for everyone. The captain had probably told that he had informed her of the checkup and Marco just made sure she did it. Luffy had just woken from his small nap when Marco came and said that Bay, the doctor, wanted them. When they went inside a bit, Bay noticed them and clicked her tongue. Perfect. You can take a seat in the bed to your right. And did and sat down, sending a look to Marco who didn't move. The blond man spoke when he saw her questioning gaze. There is always a commander on the side in case you are. I will just be out of view. And shrugged to that, not caring. She didn't mind Marco too much, knowing he was a good man. When Bay came over, Marco moved away and sat down in a chair before Bay pulled a curtain around the three of them. It made it a bit easier that Marco didn't watch them. So started Bay, would you or Luffy want to go first? And moved Luffy to have his back against her while on her lap. Luffy can. Bay nodded, starting to look the baby over. How old is he? And gave a smile on Luffy's head as he fidgeted before she answered. He is 7 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days old. Bay nodded and carefully lifted the baby to weigh and measure him, before handing him back with a frown. He seems small. And nodded. Born a month and a half early. Bay nodded, writing that down. He seems to be in good health and taken well cared of, especially for being early, no signs of anything concerning. It had and give a relieved breath, glad to hear it. She never had anyone, who knew what they were doing, to look at Luffy. And she knew early borns could have issues. After doing a standard check of Luffy's body, nothing wrong or concerning with him, Bay looked at her. Your turn. I think it would be the best if Luffy was with Commander Marco, but he can stay in the bed. And gave a small nod as she thought about it, before deciding to hand him to Marco, her liking him better being held than lying alone on a bed. He got fidgety and noisy easily. And gave Luffy a small before leaving to go back to Bay, Marco not seeming to mind watching Luffy. Bay then started with her weight and height, not commenting as she wrote it down. Milk, do you produce it? And gave a small nod. Yeah. But not much. Not enough to feed Luffy. I might have enough for a quarter meal. It have gotten more the last weeks, but barely anything. Bay had a frown as she wrote it down, and not sure what to make of it. She knew she was supposed to produce milk, but she didn't produce enough. She had heard of others who didn't produce much too. And the doctor didn't comment on it, so it couldn't be too bad, right? Bei then asked general questions she usually asked, before asking and to undress to do a small check. And took off her clothes until she was in her undergarments, and she noticed Bei's gaze instantly going to her lower belly with a frown, before she carefully traced the horrible jagged scar. Where did this come from? It doesn't even seem to have healed. And gave a flinch when the doctor touched a sore spot. It's from a C-section. Luffy's birth happened too early because of some things and I went into early labor stuff I don't know, but both Luffy and I were dying from it, and a C-section was made. My doctor didn't really know how to do that, so yeah, me getting thrown around during the last weeks didn't help. She knew it looked a bit bad and felt it hurt and burn when she moved. Bei's frown deepened. No. This isn't even close to what it should be. And it looks horrible. It looks infected, open, torn. Does this hurt? And gave a flinch and a pained sound as Bei touched. Why, yeah. It's opened a couple times as I've been thrown around here. It's only gotten worse, and stuttered as Bei touched another spot. It really was tender and raw. Bei's frown deepened at that. No. This isn't just the scar acting up, something deeper is wrong. Bei stood up and looked at her. You should let me look at it and fix it, as I am sure you're in pain. And that will not go away unless I do. This isn't just a small wound, your organs are damaged too, the cause for the pain. It will be a minor surgery, taking a couple hours at most. You'll need a couple days to gather yourself too, and didn't know what to do. She felt she could trust the doctor, but she was more worried about Luffy. She wouldn't know what to do with him when she was in surgery if she said yes. But she wanted the pain to go away. I don't know. What about Luffy? Bei shook her head. He will be taken care of, don't worry about that. But while you are amazing with Luffy, you could be more so if you had the surgery. And nodded, she knew that. She would be much better if she wasn't in pain. She thought for a few seconds, before she looked at Bei and nodded. Yeah, I want that. I hate the pain. Bei nodded, writing something on a paper. I guessed as such, and it will help. I will need a bit of time to prepare, but whiskey will prepare you while I do my things. I am sure Luffy will be safe too. Commander Marco is good with babies. He's worked with babies and mothers. And nodded, going to be sure Luffy was only around those she trusted the most. When Bei left her and headed out of the curtain, and gave a breath, knowing she needed to do this. Marco? He heard the man give a hum, before footsteps being heard as the blonde commander came into view with Luffy. Did you hear what Bei said? The man gave a small shake of his head, handing Luffy back to her, making her smile at Luffy. No, Iwa, I tried to preoccupy myself as it's not my business, unless I was told to listen. That was good in her opinion, and it made her trust him more. He didn't want to eavesdrop. She gave a sigh. Bei needs to do a small surgery. She said it would take a couple hours for everything. Could you watch Luffy? The man gave a nod. Of course, Iwa, and knew he would say yes, but she still needed to say a few things. I know you are a commander and such, but if you get called, could you hand him to Whitebeard? She didn't trust many yet, even less with Luffy. The blonde nodded. Yes. And should we both be preoccupied, which I doubt, I can hand him to Rikuyo if it's okay, Iwa. He has experience with children and babies. Oh, that was good to know. She nodded, sure Marco would act well, and took a breath again. He needs food in an hour, just milk and a banana or other mushy things should do. And a nap in 2 hours, or else he gets cranky. He likes to be spoken and sung to, and things with color. As in tried to think of more things to say, whiskey was there. We should go prepare, poured gas. It will take half an hour, as you need to wash in a special soap. The surgery should take 2 hours, we assume an hour to fall asleep and wake up combined. Waking up can take a bit more. That was a bit more than Bei had said, but and didn't like the pain. Marco had proven to be trustworthy, making her be okay with him, to Whitebeard watching her child. She gave a nod and lifted Luffy to look at her. Be good, okay? Luffy made some sounds and then gave him a on his forehead, before handling him to Marco carefully. The man was still calm, which was good, it made her feel more at ease, and gave a last look and caress to Luffy, before she followed whiskey, getting instructions how to clean herself with the soap and followed to a shower. She was still worried about Luffy, but knew he was safe with Commander Marco. He really seemed to care as he wanted to help, same with Whitebeard. As Marco watched and go through a door with whiskey, Bay was suddenly walking past him, preparing the bed. You can come back in 3 hours with Luffy. Poor Gas should wake up about then, maybe in 3.5. He nodded, changing his hold on Luffy. What kind of surgery does she need, Yua? He knew Bay wouldn't tell if she felt she couldn't. The doctor gave a sigh. Luffy was born early, why I don't know, a month and a half early with a C-section. It hasn't healed, and healed bad as it was done by an amateur. And Pops beating her around made her half-healed wound open up. Bay looked at him as she had changed the bed, looking stern. It's bad. And she's in pain, clearly. It's close to infected. I can repair the damage and rid her of the pain. She might need help with Luffy after it, as this can make her a bit weak for 2 or so days. Marco nodded. That was a lot to take in. They hadn't noticed her being in pain, and Bay's look showed that it was bad. A poorly made surgery and poorly healed wound could be bad. But that it had reopened was worse. Damn, Pops would feel guilty when he found out. He needed to be told of this, and Marco would do that if possible. I can update Pops, Yua. I need a word with him anyway. He just wanted to update about Luffy and how Marco would watch him and Pops could help. He could tell about the wound too. The doctor nodded. Yes, good. Also, if you could call her old crew on Moby too. To ask her old doctor how her body reacted to the C-section. I need that answer before an hour has passed. You could help a small bit too. Marco nodded. He could do that. When Bay left to prepare further, Marco moved out of the infirmary and headed to Pop's room, knowing the man was there. When he got to the room and walked in after a knock, he saw Aizu, Rikuyo, and a few from different divisions there. Marco, started Pops, seeing him. Good to see you. Do you need anything? Marco gave a small nod, seeing the ones inside shocked to see Luffy with him. I need to give an update from Bay, but I can go make a call first, and then update you in a few, you all. No need to rush. The man nodded, and Marco left again, going to make the call first. He got the den from Jensen, and went to a more private place. When he first called, Tifa answered and she got Biggie, the one who was the doctor on En's old crew. This is Biggie? Marco gave a small hum. This is Commander Marco. I wondered how En reacted to the C-section she had. Our doctor, Bay, is concerned by the scarring and lack of healing, as well as the bad healing. A sigh was heard on the den. Captain got into an accident. We met horrible people and the strain put her into labor. I've never dealt with pregnancies and did my best. I hope it wasn't too bad. But she reacted well. Some pain that lasted, unable to lift without stitches ripping. That might be because of me, as I didn't know what I did, but she reacted well. Never had any issues. I don't know why, but her powers never healed the wound. I mean, she has cauterized her wounds before, it never worked on this. That was a bit worrisome. I see. Thank you for the information, Wal. And while I have you on the line, is Luffy's other parent around? He really wondered about that after Bay mentioned it. The baby was still quiet and seeming to look around as he walked. He guessed the kid liked to move around. Luffy had also stretched his arms for the den, most likely since it was Biggie's voice. The baby probably missed the other. They had been around Luffy for a while. The den was quiet for a couple seconds, having a somber look. You should ask En. That's not my place to tell. Marco gave a thanks before hanging up. Marco didn't like that information and was worried about it, and would ask En about it when it seemed to be acceptable to ask. He went and updated Bay first, the doctor mentioning that the wound wouldn't be healed by her powers since it was a C-section that was done badly, and because of the emotions of needing an emergency C-section keeping it from happening. Emotions had a lot to say with devil fruit powers, especially healing. The doctor was almost ready for the surgery, just needing En to do the last preparations. Marco then headed to Pop's room again, where it was just Aizu, who left when he came. Now, son, started Pops, what do you have to tell? Marco gave a sigh. Bay is doing a surgery on En Yua. The man nodded. I see. I guess that's why you have Luffy. What surgery does she need? Marco nodded. She apparently needed a C-section, an emergency one. It was done poorly by an inexperienced doctor when it came to pregnancies, Yua. From what Bay said, it had healed bad, but the knocking around she suffered here made her barely healed wound reopen from the inside out. She needs to fix it to make sure she isn't in pain. The man got a look of guilt for a few seconds before speaking. It's good, Bae will fix it then. Did she let you have Luffy? The blonde commander nodded, looking at Luffy that was looking at Pops with big eyes. Yes, you are. She said she wants me to watch him. If I'm busy, she wants you to watch him, and in an emergency, Rikuyo. She doesn't trust anyone else right now. That had the man smile, glad the woman trusted him. Marco then told the schedule he had gotten from the woman, also telling how Biggie wouldn't tell who the father of her child was, also the look the Den had gotten. Pops didn't like that information either, but they couldn't just blurt out that they wanted to know it. They needed to find a moment that fit, as Marco had thought too. He stayed in the room with Pops for a bit, before, of course as luck would have it, he was needed to overlook a situation. Marco did go reluctantly, but handed Luffy to Pops to watch, also asking Aiza to be there too. Pops was big. If something happened, having someone the right size to help feed, hold, change, and all that would be the best. The first commander was sure everything would be fine. Whitebeard gave a frown, seeing Luffy hadn't eaten all his food, not seeming to want more from the bottle Aiza held. He had had the baby for about 2 hours, Marco helping with something, and Luffy was a delight to be around. They had done some small playing with the baby, who loved when they spoke, trying to mimic at times, which was just cute. But this was a bit worrisome. Why didn't Luffy want to eat more? The baby had only taken half of it. He knew the baby liked food when he had meal times, and especially milk from what he had heard and seen. Maybe he's tired? Wasn't his nap about now? The captain thought for a second. It was true, and they were behind schedule as they used a lot of time to try and feed the baby. He just didn't seem to want more. We'll stop and see if we can entertain him a bit then. He hasn't played long, and don't seem tired yet. Luffy looked wide awake, the captain sure the baby wouldn't sleep now. Luffy did want to play when they got a few things out that he could use, like bottles, clothes, keys, and such. But after a few minutes, Luffy started fidgeting, before crying, seeming uncomfortable and bothered by something. He tried to calm the baby, knowing he usually liked his size and seemed interested in it. But it didn't work. Whitebeard felt at a loss when he couldn't find out what was wrong with the baby. Luffy didn't need a change, didn't want more food, and just fidgeted and cried when they tried to put him to sleep, and not even making sounds helped, which it usually did. But when Luffy suddenly threw up, he felt more worried, especially as the baby cried more, seeming more uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do now. He didn't know much about babies, and it seemed like Aiza was the same. This was something they didn't know how to fix, or what was even wrong. He grabbed the cloth from Aizu and tried to clean the baby's face, looking at his son. Could you go and get Marco? Marco could come, as it wasn't anything too important he was doing, just needed to plan something, and Aizu could take over, which the crossdresser agreed to. As Whitebeard managed to clean the baby's face, the door opened to reveal Marco, Aizu beside him. Thatch took over. What's wrong? The captain explained what had happened, and Marco just gave a small chuckle, taking the baby, putting Luffy to his chest and head over his shoulder, gently patting his back. Babies swallow a lot of air when drinking milk, making them uncomfortable as they can't rid of it on their own yet, you are. So, you need to help them get it up. Burping them, as it's called. Just place him like this and gently pat his back. That made sense, he just didn't know it. After a few seconds, a small sound, like a burp, was heard, and Luffy seemed much better, not being as fidgety. Better, you are? Asked Marco, looking at the baby as he took him off his shoulder. Luffy just giggled and made a happy noise, clearly being better. Marco gave Luffy a bottle to play with, before looking at the captain. They can often regurgitate a small bit while being burped, but since he threw up, he won't. Of course, that does mean he didn't get enough food. That was a small concern, and when Marco lifted the milk bottle they had used, he said it was cold, and they couldn't feed it to Luffy now. Anne's also almost done, so I think we should let her handle it, you all. To not stress us or Luffy. That sounded the best. They stayed in his room for a bit more, before heading to the infirmary, Bae being out and telling them that Anne was done and just needed to wake up, which would be soon. The surgery had gone fine. The two of them, him and Marco, as Aiza left, sat down in a couple chairs, Marco holding the baby, who seemed to want to go to Anne, but as the woman was asleep, that wasn't the best idea, especially as she was just out of surgery. When the woman did wake up about 10 minutes later, She gave a tired smile as she sat up, giving a small wince, the doctor coming over and helping her up as the back of the bed was lifted. Bay then turned to him. She's not allowed out of bed yet, and no lifting with her abdomen, or so her abdomen muscles work for today. The captain nodded, and when the doctor went to do her things, and held her hands out to Luffy, Marco carefully handing him over. How did it go? Asked the woman as she smiled at her son. The captain said it had gone fine, Luffy being just lovely, before he could continue, and frowned at Luffy, who was sucking on his hand. Hasn't he eaten? He seems hungry. Whitebeard gave a sigh. I did feed him. But I didn't know a baby needed to be burped, so Luffy didn't drink all the milk, and threw some up. Marco came and helped after, burping him and telling why, and we didn't want to stress him by forcing him to eat. The woman nodding, seeming to be okay with it. It's fine, it happens. It is a lot to remember, and one incident now and then does happen. But you're still hungry then, Lou? You probably haven't slept either then, and you need to soon, or else you're gonna be cranky. And shifted her look from then as she spoke to Luffy, and when she had said the question, she moved her shirt a bit, which had him look away from Luffy and anywhere but seeing and going to feed him that way. She never had before, at least not around them. The captain saw Marco being more relaxed than him, not looking uncomfortable. The captain had just never seen this, and didn't want to as he did view, although he knew it wasn't mutual yet, and as his daughter, a family member. The captain knew Marco had started to think and as a sister, but he had worked with helping others before he joined them, and had probably seen many mothers doing this, therefore not reacting. He hasn't had his nap, started Marco, but since he got uncomfortable and fidgety after eating, he hasn't gotten tired. And nodded, looking at Marco. Then, he probably will be after eating now. He usually gets tired after eating. That also made sense, and he could see that and had moved her shirt up, wearing a loose one, and he couldn't see anything he shouldn't see, not that he would care, he just didn't want to accidentally look and offend the woman, as he had heard other mothers be. The captain wanted to respect the woman, but when he did look at the woman, he saw that since her shirt was pulled up, he saw the scar on her stomach, which was plastered and bandaged, looking to be big. And he started making the woman look at him. I'm sorry for all the knocking around, causing the wound to reopen. That was never my intent. The woman shrugged. It's okay, it didn't make things much worse, it was bad to start with. Biggie never knew how to deal with pregnancies. I'm just glad the pain will be gone, which I had before arriving here too. The captain liked that the woman didn't blame him, but he didn't like that she had been in pain. That meant she had fought him while hurting, and had been in pain since day one without showing or telling. She was good at hiding it then, and he would be sure to watch out after the woman more if he could. It was only a few minutes later that and moved Luffy again, making him once again look away, just in case. When he looked back, the woman had a calm look as she looked at Luffy, nuzzling a bit towards him, before lifting a small towel she had onto her shoulder, making him wonder why. But when she moved to have Luffy's head over her shoulder, carefully clapping him in the back, he got she was doing what Marco had. And was an amazing woman, and an incredible mother. She then started some small conversation with them, looking to be tired as she yawned at times. The woman was probably tired, and the surgery probably made her drowsy, same with the anesthesia. When it seemed more tired a few minutes later, even Luffy falling asleep, Bay appeared again, looking at the woman in bed. You should sleep. I want you here for the night. I've also sent whiskey to get Luffy's bed. And nodded to it, giving a small thanks for getting the bed, before she moved a bit and placed Luffy beside her, the baby yawning, and smiled and blew softly at the baby's face, making Luffy giggle, before yawning and settling down. And closed her eyes too, relaxing softly. Do I only need to be here for one night? Bay clicked her tongue. Yes. You can leave for breakfast tomorrow. That was good, and the woman nodded, still relaxing with her eyes closed. A few seconds later, the door opened and Whiskey came in with Thatch, who carried Luffy's crib, placing it next to Anne's bed. And half opened her eyes and gave a small thanks, stroking Luffy's head. She probably wanted to keep him close for a bit more, before putting him to bed. As the two relaxed, Bay clicked her tongue again. Now I would like a word with you, while Portgas and Luffy relax. The captain nodded and followed the woman to a room, wondering why she wanted to speak with them, even more why Thatch was with them, obviously getting him to be here for this. When they got to the room and the door closed, Bay sighed. Now, starting tomorrow, I want Commander Thatch to make a special diet for port gas, which needs to be nutritional, especially for a mother. All of them blinked, Thatch having a thoughtful look. I have a few dietary ideas, which would fit. But why? The doctor sighed, looking in a folder. It seems like port gas chose Luffy instead of herself, which is normal. What I mean is that she fed him, but not herself. She shows signs of early, possibly drawn-out starvation and nutrition loss. This is common with mothers who don't have the means to feed both herself and her baby, and she chose her baby. Whitebeard felt a cold feeling settle in his stomach. And had what? He heard Thatch swallow loudly. I have heard about mothers doing that. But I mean, she looks healthy. The woman did. She looked to be in good health, and she always was in the galley during meals the last weeks. How bad is it, daughter? I mean, she has been in the galley and eating during meals. He saw the other two nod, before Marco got a frown and looking appalled. She never ate. Whitebeard frowned. What do you mean? Marco shook his head. And Yua? She feeds Luffy. If there is stuff left, she takes that, then she leaves. She never takes food for herself. The captain tried and think back to meals, realizing Marco was right. Anne's plate always had Luffy's food, but nothing for herself. Bay sighed. As Thatch also said, this is, in a way, normal for mothers who don't have means to feed both herself and the baby. This is a clear sign she hasn't had much food, and it will be an adjustment to suddenly have food. She probably doesn't think the food here is for her. The captain felt a breath leave him, not sure how to handle this. He was sure the woman wouldn't react well to be handed a full plate. Thatch suddenly clapped his hands, looking zealous. I know what to do. My teacher once dealt with this, and he fixed it. I just need to find that book again. Thatch was the best with food and diets and all that, so the captain was sure it was best to just let the chef deal with this. But he would keep an eye out on and during meals. The doctor also said that, and would need a bit of help for the next couple of days, no matter what the woman said or argued. They also explained that, and shouldn't carry Luffy for long periods, even less lifting him up and down often. They all took the information in, and would be sure to help the woman the best they could. She had gotten more comfortable with them, even the fact that she was okay with them watching Luffy now. When they walked out into the infirmary again, and was asleep, Luffy in his crib and Jing his whale plushie. And had one hand on the crib, probably to be sure everything was fine. The captain just hoped the next days would go fine. As they were out, Thatch did ask if Luffy was Anne's son, telling he had a sure feeling since she had sacrificed her food to him. The captain didn't see any reason in telling no, especially since he seemed to know already. The chef did get a guilty look, Whitebeard knowing Thatch had been a bit resentful since he thought and had kidnapped a baby. They all had, even though they didn't mean to. Whitebeard also had a feeling everyone would soon know Luffy was Anne's baby. Not only since she was more out, and one could really see her caring for him, but since Thatch would tell Aizu, and Aizu was the queen of rumors. It would spread like wildfire. It might be good though, so none of them had any sullen feelings towards her. When the next day came, Aizu had come out with Luffy in his arms, and close by with a hand on her abdomen, her wound probably hurting a bit, and Aizu was helping to keep any strain away. Aizu was also one of the best with being stern, the only one better being Marco. Aizu wouldn't ask, he would just take Luffy and walk beside and, not leaving with Luffy, but showing he would help and not taking no for an answer. When the food for Luffy came, Aizu getting it after placing Luffy in his seat, the 16th commander also had a drink with her, looking like a milkshake, putting it on the table next to the mashed banana in a bowl and bottle of milk. The breakfast went by fine, and went and left, telling Luffy needed a change. Aizu followed after her, probably to make sure everything was fine. But as the woman was gone, the captain noticed the drink wasn't even touched, Thatch just shaking his head to it. It's fine. I have another plan that will probably work better. I'm still searching for my book though. Whitebeard decided that if Thatch was calm, it wasn't any worry. This was his thing, what he knew the most about, the reason he was the head chef. The rest of the day went in the same fashion, the captain often seeing Luffy in Marco's, Aizu's, and even a couple times, in Thatch's arms, them always being close to him. Thatch did also say, after Luffy had one of his meals, he had offered the drink to Anne, which she declined. It worried the captain, but he would trust his son. Thatch looked to know what he was doing. Thatch also said he would have everything prepared by tomorrow. finding the book he had from his old teacher. Things would be fine, Whitebeard was sure of it. Marco watched as and went into the galley, sitting down on the table with them as she usually did, placing Luffy on a chair next to her, Joza having made a sort of high chair for the baby so he sat safely. It was better than needing to have him on her lap, especially now as she was still recovering from the surgery. It had already been 1 day, and she looked a lot better, but still. She did the usual, grabbing a plate and a bottle, filling the bottle with milk, and snapping her fingers to heat it. Her powers were good for situations like that. The woman moved to stand up to get food from the kitchen, as they didn't have good food for Luffy out here, and she wanted to do things herself, which the commander got. But before she could stand up, Thatch was quickly beside her, putting down a plate with 2 small bowls of food, a spoon, and a banana. Here, I read a bit up on healthy foods for a baby, found an old book I had, and blinked. Oh, really? That's really helpful of you. What is it? Thatch had a grin as he pointed to the first bowl. This is a simple banana, apple, potato, and formula mix. And this is with carrots, beets, and squash. Marco gave a smile to the chef, knowing those foods were good and healthy for Luffy. But when he looked at Anne, she had a sheepish look, pushing the second bowl a bit away. I'm sorry, but Luffy can't eat beets yet. His stomach can't handle it. Marco didn't know anything on what a baby could eat or not, but the frown Thatch got had him feeling the chef was sure Luffy could. But isn't Luffy 7.5 months old? They can eat beets. It's healthy for them. And gave a sheepish smile. That's true. But Luffy he's an early born by 1.5 months. That Marco knew. But did that have an effect on this? The food is mashed. The way Thatch's eyes widened, Marco was sure it was something important. Right. You mentioned he was early. I never knew how much. He has the stomach to a 6-month-old. Let me get another one. I have one in the fridge, saved for lunch. I can just make something else for then. Thatch took the bowl as he went to the kitchen, and on her way to speak, but didn't manage as Thatch left, muttering some words loud enough for him to hear. You don't need to do this. Marco gave a small snort. Don't even try and tell him that. He has said it's a chef's code to be sure everyone has the right food, and he loves to cook, and gave a nod, having a grateful look as she moved to take the spoon and readying a spoon of the porridge of a kind for Luffy. Here, Lou, some new food. The baby didn't move to open his mouth, keeping it shut. Maybe Luffy didn't like this kind of food? The first commander was on his way to speak, when the woman moved and put a larger amount on the spoon. Wouldn't that be too much? Marco felt himself more confused when Anne took the spoon in her own mouth, taking about half of the porridge off, before offering it to Luffy again. And this time, the baby instantly opened his mouth and ate it, looking happy. Marco had no idea what was happening, but didn't want to ask and possibly make her stop. He would ask Thatch later instead. He might know. The first commander then watched as Anne slowly fed Luffy, more often than not taking the first bite of the food, before giving the rest to Luffy. When Luffy didn't eat it, and just ate it, before starting again, it was a couple minutes later that Thatch came back out, placing a new bowl, this being with carrots, potatoes, and apple, the woman giving a thanks to it. When the chef sat down, and turned to the chef, having a fascinating look. This also tastes really good. The ones I've tried to make never tasted this good. Thatch waved his hand at the woman. Now, it is the recipe from my old teacher. I can't take all the credit. And gave a grateful look. Still, the fact you went out of your way to make it. I really appreciate it. The chef waved the woman off, telling it was nothing, and continuing to feed Luffy, eating some herself now and then. When the woman left half an hour later, the bowls and bottle empty, Marco looked at Thatch. Was that your plan, Yua? Pops looked curious about that too. Thatch nodded. Yeah. It was way more food than Luffy needs, and since it's 4 separate things, 2 bowls, a banana, and bottle, it's hard to see. Luffy wouldn't eat more than he usually does, and Anne wouldn't give more either. I can see her keeping track. Why give so much food then? Before he could speak, Pops did. Ah, I see. So it makes her eat more? Thatch nodded. Yes. It is highly nutritional, even for adults, especially mothers. It's a trick to make a mother eat more, and slowly adapting them to eat more. One can't suddenly go from eating nothing or little, to eating full plates. You get sick. It's also not solid food, which is good to be sure she can handle it. Aha, Marco got it now. That was a smart trick. Will it be enough for her, Yuwa? Thatch gave a nod. Now, at the start, yes. I don't know how much she usually eats, and I don't want to overwhelm her stomach. I will place specially made things for mothers in a few days, just to be sure it won't be too much for her. That sounded like a smart plan, brilliant even. But I still wonder, Yuwa. Why did she more often than not take the first bite? Thatch gave a look. You don't know why? Mister, I know everything? Didn't you say you had worked with mothers before? Marco shrugged. I didn't follow their every move. Thatch chuckled. It's a safety mechanism in babies, or survival mechanism is better. The food, it's a new thing, it smells different, looks different, and that is scary. But mommy is safe. So if she takes the first bite, it smells and tastes like mommy, meaning it is safe. Babies are really smart actually. And so is Anne. Not many young mothers, or first-time mothers, know that. Marco nodded, understanding that. It made sense, and he could understand not many knew that. He wondered who had taught the woman. Someone must have said the basics. She really is an amazing mother. Marco agreed with Pops. And was more amazing than most mothers he had seen. She really cared for Luffy, and they want to help her, to make it easier. The woman must be really tired. Being a mother is tough. Being a single mother, a pirate, and barely an adult made it so much harder. Marco couldn't express the amount of respect he had for her, and she was amazing. When dinner rolled by, Thatch did the same again, just with different foods, Marco now noticing how much food it really was. The amount Anne ate was about quarter of a regular meal, which was a good amount to start and off of. As dinner was coming to an end, Thatch had sat down with them and looked at the woman. And you're a pretty woman. Do you have a boyfriend or anything? I mean, if he's on the Moby too, we can get him. A pretty woman like you shouldn't be all alone. And had blinked at the man, before shaking her head as she moved Luffy to her shoulder to burp him. No. I've sailed alone in that manner. And I don't mean disrespect, but you aren't exactly my type. That had Thatch quickly shaking his head. Oh no. I'm not interested. I also root for the other team, me and Eyes are a thing. I just find it weird someone as beautiful as you doesn't have any romances lined up. Oh God, Marco wanted to punch Thatch. This was way too inappropriate. Marco got the chef had just figured out Luffy was Anne's son, but that didn't make this okay, and blinked, moving Luffy to sit on her lap. Oh, I didn't know that. You do fit together though. And no, I think Luffy scares most off, and to be honest, I'm not out after a relationship. We are fine by ourselves. Thatch nodded. Thank you, and I respect that. You are amazing and Luffy is so lucky to have you. Luffy really was, and Marco saw and smiling. I'm glad you think that. Okay, maybe he wouldn't throttle Thatch. This seemed to be a good conversation, and since most had left the galley, it opened for him to ask something that had been on his mind for a while. He thought that now felt the right time, now that most were out, just Pops, Thatch, and Isa left close to them, and started Marco, I need to ask. Where is Luffy's father, Yuwa? Did he leave you alone on the sea? It could make sense if they set out together, and then he left. That was horrible of him to do, but wasn't sure what else. He had another idea, but that was worse, if Luffy was the result of a forced act, and got a sad look as she looked at Luffy, lifting the baby so he stood on her legs. Luffy's father Sabo was the love of my life. We'd been together always since we were small. Then I got pregnant, and Sabo tried to protect us, then he died, and I needed to leave to keep Luffy safe. Marco felt with the woman, meeting a guy she liked and grew up with, to then be left alone bearing as he died. I know it won't do anything or mean much, but I offer my condolences. He was probably an amazing guy, and nodded, a bit blank in her eyes. Yeah, he was everything, seen way too much for his age, acting adult-like. I'm sad Luffy will never meet him. And made a small face to Luffy so the baby smiled and laughed. Everyone told me to get rid of him, to choose to ruin my life or kill him. I made what I believed to be the right choice, never regretted it once. The first commander never knew how others could be so cruel. To say she needed to choose between those two things. And was an amazing mother too. I also think you chose the right thing. The others in the room nodded and made sounds of agreement. When Isa did that, Luffy looked at the crossdresser and made a noise as he stretched his hands out towards him, and gave a chuckle, making a small face to Luffy again. Tired of my lap? I'm sure Isa could share his. As in spoke, she moved to hold Luffy towards the crossdresser, who took the small child with a smile, making Luffy make a small happy screech, legs kicking. The baby looked really happy, and when he was in Isa's lap, he moved to touch his clothing, dragging on it. And sighed. Bright colors. He loves it. Just hold his hands if it's too much. The 16th commander nodded, not seeming to mind it. It's okay. It can handle being pulled, and was being more and more open with them, letting them help her with Luffy more. He felt lugubrious on the woman's behalf. She had found the love of her life, gotten pregnant, lost her lover, and was now left with the baby alone. No one should go through that, and he could see the others feeling the same, and was amazing and young, already having gone through so much. The first commander felt relieved when Pops started up a story from his youth, making the atmosphere lighten. They would help the woman and her child. They would also thankfully stop at a small island soon, to restock things, and they could see if they found something for Luffy, as in clothes and such. Isa smiled at Luffy, who was playing in a sandbox, them just having gotten on an island today, and Isa had said he would take Luffy out to play, and she could go shop alone. The woman deserved that, and he made sure Marco gave her enough money to get stuff. Isa had also given her a shirt with their mark on, just so the ones here knew she was with them. She was also already looking better, the small trick Thatch had done to make her eat better working. Thatch had said he would speak to the woman tomorrow or the next day, saying she would eat more and that he would fix everything. She had reacted well to the extra food now, and the chef could see her body had adapted to it. There were a few other kids playing too, one cute blonde kid close to Luffy, both of them hacking the sandy ground with their hands and small plastic things that was here. What a nice kid, Tommy seems to like him. How old is he? Isa gave a smile to the woman next to him, most likely the mother to the blonde kid next to Luffy. He is. I'm just watching him for his mother. He's 7 months, soon 8. The woman smiled. He's cute and friendly. I wish they could play more. But I have work and his father has plans places. Isa waved it off, saying it was fine. They had more time later maybe, or if they stayed, tomorrow. It probably was good for Luffy to play with other babies, others his age. He did well on the boat, but he looked happy now. After a small while, Luffy dropped the toys he had and held his hands out, doing a small screech as he smiled, looking happy. A second later, Isa noticed and coming from his left, giving a smile as she picked Luffy up, nuzzling towards him. How have you been? Were you nice to Isa? As Isa was about to answer, to say he had been amazing, the woman he had talked to moved, having a disgusted frown as she lifted the blonde kid. Come, Tommy. We won't be around likes like this, disgusting. Isa blinked, seeing and not caring, leaving while the woman gave her a disgusted look. She had been so nice to him, why change? Was this how people treated and, just because she was a young mother? He knew some looked down on it, but not like this. This was horrible. And just thought it was normal? She didn't even bat an eye. The 16th commander stood shocked for a few seconds, seeing the woman sending disgusted looks after and... Oh, if they weren't friendly here, Isa would have punched the woman. He quickly headed after and, needing to speak to her, finding the young mother in her room, and that was not okay. You shouldn't just be okay with it. The woman shrugged. It's normal. They don't like me or Luffy, so we just keep away. That was not okay, not by Izu. No, it's not. You are the most amazing mother I have seen. And gave a to Luffy's head, before looking at him. Drop it, okay? It's okay. I can handle words and looks. After all, he is a fatherless child, that is frowned upon, you know that. Isa gaped. How wasn't so calm about this? Yes, Luffy was a fatherless child, but that was since the father, and's love of her life, had died protecting them. He was about to speak up when and moved some of her hair away, having a look in her eye that made him shut up, and had a painful and miserable look in her eye, making Isa get it. Him making a deal of this wouldn't help. The only thing it would do is remind her of Luffy's father, of Sabo. Isa moved to Anne, making her shocked for a second as he get her, being sure to hold around her the best he could. I am so sorry for everything. I am sorry for what everyone is doing, what everyone is reminding you of. He felt and slowly nod her head, moving to him back, obviously just needing a. If Isa could, he would have killed everyone who thought and to be horrible just for having a baby, for having lost her love, for just being herself. Oh, so he hated the world at times. You never need to be afraid here. You are amazing. You are as everyone else on this ship, a child of the sea. Never let anyone tell you anything different. He felt a nod, tightening her hands a bit, obviously upset. Thank you, Aizu. The 16th commander shook his head, letting go of the woman and looking at her, seeing the sadness in her eyes. We are all here for you. That's what family does. He knew and hadn't joined them yet, not having made a decision. And even if she declined, they would always love her as a sibling, and nodded and gave a thanks, before turning back to Luffy, putting a new shirt on him, one she probably had just bought. Aizu could see a few bags here and there, mostly small toys, extra bottles, and a few clothes for her. Aizu carefully walked out, and he would be sure to speak to Marco and Pops, just to tell how awful people were and how much it clearly bothered Anne. But not for the reason they first had thought. They had thought she didn't like it since she was a young mother, that she felt judged. But it wasn't that. It was since it reminded her of all her sacrifices, of Sabo's sacrifices. If Aizu could, a lot of people would be dead. He took a breath when he got out of the room, heading towards the main deck to see if anyone needed help with anything, going to wait with speaking to Pops later, when there weren't as many prying ears. However, when he was halfway to the main deck, Marco stopped him and asked him to join him in town, them needing some supplies Pops had requested, and Haruta had said she found a shop that had all that, including children's clothing. They should get the woman something, and Marco wanted him to join since he knew fabrics and such. Aizu would love to join, and they quickly headed off the boat and into the store, which was a plant store, connected to a clothes store. The shop owner probably run both businesses. It was a small and nice island, but when Aizu looked around for a worker here, to ask for clothes and such, he felt annoyed when he saw the woman from earlier, even worse when she had a worker shirt on. The woman worked here? He was about to ask Marco what they needed, when the other woman looked at him. The woman gave a sneer to them. Why do you travel with her, a young woman with a fatherless child? Disgusting. Aizu gaped at the woman. She was being like this even now. They came to do business. Don't say that about Anne. She's a much better woman than you. Probably a better mother too. Marco looked at him in question, but got he would explain later, and that this was about her bad-mouthing Anne. The woman sneered at him. At least, I'm not a whore. That was it for Aizu, who put his gun up and pointed it at the woman who had crossed a line. No one, and I mean no one, calls my family names. The woman looked shocked and half scared, but seemed to think Aizu wouldn't shoot. Say that one more time, and I will bring my family to war with this island. The woman looked more scared at that, but didn't back down, making Aizu furious. How dare she? Just as he was about to speak again, someone from a door back came out. Whoa. What's happening? Melanie, what did you do? So, that was her name. Aizu looked at the man, probably the shop owner. She bad-mouthed one of my siblings. Not once, not twice, but more. Just because she has a child. The man blinked. Oh, the lovely woman with long black hair, the red shirt with your mark, and cowboy hat? Aizu blinked, lowering his gun. Yes. How did you know? The man smiled. She came by when I restocked, and I had some issues since Melanie was late. She helped before she left, said she heard something fall and made sure I was fine. She seemed lovely and said she had a child. The man looked at the woman. Now, why do you badmouth her? She helped. And they are customers. The woman looked horrified. Are you insane? You saw her? She's a young whore with no father for the baby. I don't help who. The man cut her off, Aizu on his way to hit her, when the man spoke. No, I don't care about your views. If you can't act like an adult or do your job, which you can't, you are now fired. The woman then started yelling, the man throwing her outside, before coming back to them with a sigh. I apologize for her. She has had more than one issue like that, but never this bad. The lady who was here was a lovely help, but she left before I could thank her or even ask for her name. Aizu smiled, glad this man was nice, and put his gun away. That's Anne. She's really caring. The man smiled. What you need is of course going to be half price, both because of this, and how nice Anne was. Her help made my day much easier. Isaac got an idea. We are here for just regular supplies, we need fruit and such, but we saw you had children's clothes, and Anne's child needs some. But how about we go bring her here? So you can thank her, and we can actually be sure the clothes fit. That had the shop owner light up, wanting to thank the woman properly. The man also said his name was Hank, him telling that his mother had raised him alone, so he knew how tough it could be. Isa stayed in the store, Marco fetching, and Isa spoke with the man, which was just lovely and kind, the owner showing him different clothes and fabrics. It didn't take long until the door opened again and Marco came in with Luffy and gave a small gasp to Luffy. See Luffy, it's the nice man I said I helped before I got you. Say hi. The baby gave some bubbles and gurgles. The shop owner smiled and went to them, waving to the baby. Hi, you have a very lovely mom, she was a help. Luffy gave a small screech and moved his hands out, grabbing the man's blue jacket, and instantly got Luffy to release it and held the baby a bit away, giving Luffy a small face, before looking at Frederick. Sorry, he likes bright and strong colors. The man waved it off. No need to apologize. He is lovely too. And for your help earlier, I would like to offer some clothes to you and Luffy. And blinked. Oh no, you don't need to do that. Hank shook his head. You're right, I don't need to. But I want to. Your help made my day so much easier. I would love to help you with some clothes or anything, and smiled at the man. If you're sure that it's fine. Hank did of course say that it was fine, and they soon moved through the store, Marco taking care of the fruit and trees they needed, while Izu and Hank and Luffy looked at clothes. It was a whole hour later when they went out the door, and giving thanks to Hank, really appreciating this. They had gotten some clothes, both cute ones, things he needed, and a few Isa had lured with him, knowing Thatch would thank him later. When they got back to the boat, Isa took one bag to his room, going to go over with Thatch later. He had gotten a pineapple onesie, one shaped like a dragon, a few with funny text on, and a cute set with a nice shirt and pants, and a hat, going to make Luffy look like a small adult. He was also trying to get Luffy for a night, so the woman could relax. But he didn't want to push it too much, wanting Anne to agree with it. It had been a good end to a day, and gave a breath as she sat with Luffy on her lap, just having finished feeding him. Luffy was so amazing and ate good, and wanting him to feel and be well. Everything the pirates did for her was amazing, even the clothes she had gotten earlier today. They had just set sail, and since they stocked up on fruit and such, Luffy had much more different broths that the chef made. They were all so nice. As she was about to head out, knowing Luffy was starting to get tired and had a nap now, he was stopped by Thatch. Oh, and I would like a word with you. It had the woman blink, not sure what this was about, hoping everything was fine. She was about to stand up and head after the chef but stopped when she heard Luffy give a yawn. She shouldn't move him around too much, it could make him regurgitate. He carefully asked Isa to watch him, which the commander of course said he could, instantly taking the baby that was falling asleep, and then headed after Thatch. When they got into the kitchen, Thatch even sent the other chefs out, before asking her to sit on a chair close to the table, Thatch sitting on the other side. And felt worried something was wrong. Is there anything wrong, Thatch? Has anything happened to the food Luffy had eaten? And had no idea what this was about, but had a feeling it was something serious. Thatch shook his head. No, everything is fine with Luffy and his food. I want to speak about you. And blinked. Thatch wanted to speak about her. Why do you want that? And honestly had no idea. Thatch moved and took a glass from a counter, big one, and placed it in front of her. Starting today, with every meal, I want you to drink this, and eat at least 2 pieces of food alongside it when it's dinner. And blinked. Thatch wanted what? But I mean, I don't need that. I feel fine. She really did. She already had so much more food than she ever had. Thatch shook his head. This is not a question or up for discussion. I know you've eaten little, you had signs of starvation. You need to eat more, eat how much you actually need. What you are doing isn't good for you, and felt a sigh leave her. So they had caught up on how she hadn't had much food. She had hoped it would go fine, especially since she had gotten larger portions for Luffy. Oh, the chef was smart. She knew it was way too much food, but it had felt nice. And she had produced much more milk the last weeks. Maybe this was why. Maybe she really needed more food. When she felt Thatch look at her worriedly, she realized she needed to respond. Honestly, I never thought it was that bad and I've already had so much more food here. Thatch shook his head. I know. I have been slowly giving you food, to get you used to it. I don't want you to get sick, or damage your stomach, and moved a hand to her stomach. It had been having a few stomach aches the last days, as she had gotten more food. The amount Thatch had out now was way over the double she usually ate. She didn't want to make the chef guilty for making so much she couldn't eat it. She sighed she needed to tell that. What, Anne? Is there anything wrong? She took a deep breath. It's just. I know it isn't too much, but just the amount the last days I've been having stomach aches. That had the chef look shocked, making her feel like she said something wrong. Just as she was about to speak, Thatch spoke. That's not good. It isn't that much food, barely a quarter of a normal meal. How long have you not had enough food? And tried to think, knowing she should tell the chef. About a year? It started when I set out. The chef looked shocked. That's worse than I thought, but you need to eat more. This isn't good for you, you could injure your stomach. She hadn't thought about that. And based on how shocked and guilty the chef looked, she felt bad. I didn't mean to. I can't eat much now. It hurts. Thatch quickly shook his head. No, this isn't your fault. I just didn't think it was that bad. But listen, the drink, you need to drink that. Maybe start with half and try and eat more. Nothing solid, okay? And keep me updated on how you feel? And nodded. She could do that. Thatch looked glad by that, and he mentioned some foods that would be easy on her stomach, but would be good for it too, aside from the drink. The chef then moved and did something to the drink, before giving the glass back, now half full. At least drink this. It has all the nutrients you need, and it will help your stomach settle again and get used to food. You don't need to drink it fast, but one each meal. And nodded and smiled at the chef. I will try. And thank you, I mean it. I never really had many around me to help. She didn't. Her old crew had been amazing, but none of them had much of anything, and the little they had she shared with everyone, just taking things if she knew everyone was fine. She never thought it would be damaging. She took the drink and headed out with Thatch, the first commander and captain looking glad she had the glass. They probably knew too, and didn't know entirely what to think. She never had anyone care so much for her, or care about her. It felt nice to feel comfortable, to feel liked. When dinner was over, she laid Luffy down for his nap, letting him sleep for an hour, before taking him outside since the weather was so nice today. As she had been out for a while, playing with Luffy and being around the others, she gave a small grimace as she moved a hand through her hair. It was really greasy. She looked at Aizu, who was with her out on deck. Aizu, could you watch Luffy? I actually really need a shower, I noticed. The 16th commander instantly said he could, and when he had Luffy, the commander looked at her. Also, you have long hair, which is amazing and beautiful, but in my room I have some hair wash and conditioner, it's perfect for long hair. And blinked at that, moving one hand through her hair. It had gotten long, almost down to her hip now. She should maybe cut it a small bit. But that was really nice of the commander. Are you sure I can use it? The commander nodded, even following her to his room and handing her the hair wash. This was all so nice. Everyone was helping her out, and she loved that Luffy was so happy and that she was getting help with everything. This place was nice, but did she want to stay? She wasn't sure. She even didn't know if the offer to stay was still up. The captain hadn't mentioned it in a while, but they hadn't been on an island where leaving would be easy. She really didn't know what to do. But either way, she was just glad things were fine now. Oh no, Pops, there's someone that's gonna try and take your spot as captain. Marco frowned. He hadn't seen any boat or anything closing in. They were out in the middle of the sea too. Pops looked confused too, looking at Thatch. Who is this? Just let them try. Thatch smiled. Marco, now sure this was a prank or joke or something. It is the world's strongest and cutest trier. The amazing Luffy. Thatch then held Luffy up, who had been in a bag of sorts, giggling and kicking his feet. Thatch then held the baby down, grinning widely as he pointed to his onesie. See, he's the captain now. Get over it. Marco had to chuckle himself, seeing the baby had a onesie that said I'm the captain, get over it. It was cute, Pops laughed. I see. I believe you are right too. I can't fight him, he's too cute. Everyone laughed, and Luffy loved how everyone was happy and made a happy screech, hands and legs moving. Then, it wasn't long before Luffy was in Pop's chair, the captain resting on some crates nearby, everyone loving how Luffy had fun rolling around on the chair and on the jacket that was still there, dragging on it at times. Many even took pictures, Thatch saying they needed to send a picture to the Marines, saying they had a new captain, a new world's strongest man. It was fun to watch, and Luffy seemed to really enjoy himself too. As they were enjoying it, a Sai to his left had him see and coming towards the chair, her hair more flat since it was wet, and using a hand to move it over her shoulders. New captain, eh? Well, if you don't come now for your nap, the only captain you will be is Captain Grumpy Pants. That had all of them chuckle as and lifted the happy baby. Thatch gave a half-hearted sigh as he laughed. But he's the captain. You can't just take the captain. Marco had a feeling everyone was enjoying this, and made a face to Luffy. See? He doesn't want you to nap. That means that next time you get grumpy, Mr. Grumpy Pants, Thatch will watch you, so I don't have to deal with it, my grumpy little captain. Thatch groaned at that, and walked away. No, I don't want that. Everyone laughed, and even though they had never seen Luffy grumpy, Marco was sure Luffy could be a handful then. Babies were like that. And chuckled. No, you said it. It was you who said it, and you who will deal with it. And nuzzled towards Luffy. And I swear you gain a ton when grumpy. So heavy and hard to handle. Thatch groaned again, obviously regretting saying what he did. Marco felt himself laugh, knowing that was true, that babies could somehow feel much heavier when grumpy, and they were nearly impossible to handle. It was a good day. Whitebeard sat out and watched his children do their duties and relaxing. It had been a good day, and it was now slowly darkening outside, the sun disappearing down the horizon. They had all enjoyed today, and everyone was still chuckling about the greatest Luffy earlier. Thatch was still proud of that, even if he had to deal with a grumpy Luffy sometime. And then the baby were out too, Luffy having a thicker onesie on, this one looking like a blue bear, Luffy looking really cute. He had spoken to Thatch earlier, the chef saying he had spoken to and about eating more, saying it was worse than he had thought. Just the amount she had had the last days had been too much for her stomach, and that wasn't much. And wouldn't bat an eye to sacrifice herself for Luffy. She cared so much for that little bundle of joy. He had also had a small conversation with Aizu, the 16th commander, telling of a run-in with a woman called Melanie and how Anne had been upset, also telling why. It was clear the woman missed Luffy's father, that she missed the man that had been her first love, the man she had lost. Whitebeard wasn't sure if the woman had processed the fact he was gone, seeing as so much had happened. But he didn't want to bring it up, not sure how to do it or how the woman would react. He would like to get to know the woman better. For now, he made sure to tell the woman they were here for her. He also knew Marco did his best in supporting her, being the first one and had trusted. His first commander was amazing with many things, and he knew Marco would always be there for the woman and her child. The rest of the day went by calmly, him staying up with a few of his children in his room. Bay had been out and threatened him that if he was out another minute, he would lose certain body parts. She was the best doctor, but she was stern. As they were just sitting and chatting as they relaxed, the door was opened as Thatch burst in with Isa close behind, looking overjoyed. Guess what? The chef almost yelled out. Before any of them could even produce a response, Thatch continued. We get to watch Luffy tomorrow night. That had the captain glad. She let you watch him for an entire night? He didn't doubt their ability to watch a baby, but that and had said yes. Isa gave a nod, also looking delighted. She did. I have mentioned it 100 times, but she agreed and said we could tomorrow. From 8 p.m. until 8 a.m., 12 whole hours. The two sounded excited, which he got. This was the first time they would really watch the baby, never having him for more than an hour every now and then. This was a milestone, this was a good sign. The woman hadn't mentioned anything about staying, and the captain didn't want to overwhelm the woman. The two sat down and told how they had been with Anne and Luffy, playing with small things and just enjoying the evening before Luffy went to sleep, and Isa had thought and looked tired. So, he had asked if he and Thatch could watch Luffy for this night, which the woman had said no to. They had accepted that, not bugging the woman, but she had been thinking, before she mentioned they could tomorrow, making them overly excited. They had, of course, hid the most of it, not wanting to scare the woman by yelling out how happy they were. It made all of them here glad too, all of them wanting to have the young mother in their family. She was just lovely, Isa did say, and was making a list of Luffy's schedule, even if it was just bedtime at 9 to 9:30, maybe a feeding during the night, and be awake by 7. And was also writing down every do's and don'ts, what Luffy liked, what he didn't like, and everything. The captain did get that. The woman was an amazing mother, and she had never been parted from her baby, even if that was just by not having him in her arms at all times or seeing where he was. She was protective of her baby. He had also realized a mistake on his part a week ago, when a boat had come to fight them. The look and had as she protected her baby was the same she had had when he first run into her. Whitebeard had never realized the only reason and attacked him was because she thought him to be a threat. She never wanted to take his head for his status, she just wanted to protect her baby. It must have just been worse when she was on the ship without familiar faces. The captain couldn't apologize for that now, it was almost a month since that. He still felt guilty for it, and would do his best to make the woman comfortable. He just hoped their first meeting wouldn't make her leave. Whitebeard had thought and was the aggressive one, but it had been them. Not the best first impression. But it would hopefully would all go fine. When the next day started, it was easy to see Thatch, and Isa was excited for evening to come, excited to watch the baby. He also hoped the woman would get a good night's sleep without interruptions. The day did go fine, and using the time she could to go over Luffy's schedule and how to calm him, they did their best to calm the woman and reassure her, telling again and again that if anything happened, they would get her, and did look apprehensive and concerned, but she seemed to want to go through with this. After Isa had said he thought and looked tired, he had to agree. The woman looked tired. A good night's sleep would be good for her. When evening rolled by, and the clock just shy of 8 p.m., and gave a loving to Luffy and on his head, before she left, heading to her room to relax. She looked worried, and Whitebeard hoped it would go fine, that she would sleep and relax. When Rikuyo asked where Luffy would sleep, Isa said they had gotten the crib for the night, having it in Thatch's room. He had the biggest bed for the two of them. It looked like everything was in order, and all the commanders, and even many others out, told they would help if it was needed. It was good to see everyone wanting to help and being helpful. The captain loved his family. Marco gave a breath, stretching a bit as he was working on some paperwork, having the time to do it now and not seeing any reason not to. As he was about to start again, there was a knock at his door, making him give a breath as he took his glasses off. Marco moved to his door, opening it, not sure who would knock on his door. It was his night off. Of course, he was still, rarely, called for on his days off. Unforeseen things could happen. When the door was open, he was a bit stunned to see in there. "And you are? Do you need anything?" And opened her mouth, on her way to speak, but only an exhale left her, before shaking her head. "Honestly, I don't know. It's just Luffy's with Isa and Thatch for the night, and my room just felt empty. I remembered you said I could come here if I needed help or wanted to speak, or just anything. I just don't know what to do. I've always had Luffy." Marco gave a smile, feeling with the woman, moving so she could come inside the room. "I understand. I meant it, so come inside." And smiled back at him, walking in so Marco could close the door. The first commander felt empathetic with the woman. She had always been with Luffy in the last months, and always had him there, and now he wasn't, for a night, making the woman feel lonely. Izu and Thatch had spoken about letting and have a night or day off, to give her a break. When Marco turned around to head for his chair, he saw and had sat down in his bed, one hand on her face, cheek to be specific, looking desolated. "I don't know why I came here, I just couldn't be alone in that room anymore. And Luffy is out on deck and I can't sit away from him. I don't mean to impose." Marco shook his head as he sat down on his chair again. "You're not imposing, don't think that, you all. I meant what I said, my door is always open. The first night away from your baby is the hardest, especially since you have such amazing mother instinct." Marco had seen many mothers being somewhat disturbed that they were apart from their baby, and was an amazing mother who loved Luffy with all she had. And gave a weak chuckle. "How do you know what to say all the time? You always say the right things." Marco chuckled. "I've been around a long time, you all. You pick up things along the way." It had the woman chuckle, before asking on how long he had been on this ship, making some small talk up. It was nice, and he didn't mind the company. And was a lovely lady. He spoke about small things that had happened, telling stories from their adventures and everyone's drunken nights, not realizing he spoke for almost an hour. How do you like it here, Anne? Anne? When the woman didn't answer for a couple seconds, he turned to the bed, seeing Anne had laid down and was asleep, a relaxed look on her face. Marco looked at the woman with a sympathetic smile, moving to drape his covers over her. The woman would never admit it, but it was clear she was tired. Having a baby was hard and took a lot of energy. The woman needed and deserved a break, to relax and know Luffy was taken care of. And looked relaxed, sleeping with one arm above her head, her hair spread out around her, making her fair skin stand out from the black hair. And was a beautiful and gracious woman, lovely to be around. Luffy was lucky to have her as a mother. Marco went back to his desk, continuing his paperwork, wanting to get it done. It took him a few hours, and when he was finished, he gave a breath as he stretched, feeling somewhat tired. He moved to look at the bed, seeing the woman had turned to rest on her side, facing the other way. Marco had a decent-sized bed, more than enough for 2 people. So Marco moved to the bed and lay down in it, taking his reserve covers he had. And wasn't the only one who had done this, but it had been years since last time, Marco remembering it was Haruta, a bit after she joined them. Marco had invited the 14th commander to stay that night, both of them having taken some drinks, and Haruta was buzzed and almost half asleep anyway. Marco gave a breath as he closed his eyes, glad the raven-haired woman was settling with them, looking to be enjoying it here, making all of them glad. She was a lovely woman and everyone liked her and Luffy. It didn't take long for Marco to fall asleep, not minding the other person in the bed, letting her have space, not wanting to startle the woman, and felt the breath leave her, slowly waking up, feeling well rested. It felt good, and she hadn't felt this rested for a while. Luffy always kept her up late, and woke her up during the night when he was hungry. So, it felt nice to wake up by herself for once, Luffy presumably still asleep. He was sleeping more during the nights, slowly growing up. When Anne opened her eyes, she moved her head a bit, hearing someone breathing next to her. She blinked as she saw a head with blonde hair in bed with her, making her smile. She moved closer to the shape, lifting her arm over the other, and moving her head into the nape of his neck, taking in the scent of the other. She loved when she woke up and Sabo was still asleep next to her, a rare event as he was early up, her tired mind moving automatically, not minding having a lazy morning in bed, needing that after the nightmare she has had. But when the other gave a breath, hearing a darker voice speak up, her eyes widened. "And you are?" And instantly sat up, feeling stupid when confused blue eyes looked at her. Of course it wasn't Sabo. He was dead. And she had been with Marco last night. She didn't mean to fall asleep here. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to and didn't even know what to say or do." She had snuggled up to Marco, thinking he was someone completely different. She moved her hands to her face, shaking her head, hoping this was a dream, feeling her chest tightening as breathing became harder, her not meaning to do this. She tried to take a deep breath when a hand went to her back, moving in a comforting way. And just shook her head, moving her hands to fists as they shielded her face, not wanting to look up at the person she had thought to be Sabo. "Anne? What is it? Why are you apologizing, you all?" And tried to get her breathing under control, keeping her head down with her hands on her face. "I didn't mean to fall asleep to cuddle up or anything. I just saw the blonde hair, I just thought it was Sabo. I'm sorry I didn't and felt awful," and she couldn't form a sentence, not meaning to do any of this. She looked up to Marco, on how calm he was, how caring and compassionate the man was. She didn't want to mess that up. And wished this was just a dream and she could wake up now. Marco gave a breath, feeling somber when he got what had happened. He didn't mean to deceive the woman, making her believe or think he was Sabo, or remind her that he wasn't here. And had never said how Sabo looked, and he obviously had blonde hair. And wasn't the one who should be apologizing. He should. He had probably made the woman think everything was fine, that Sabo was still here, and he just shattered that. Marco moved his hand on Anne's back as she shook her head, her long hair shielding her face that she had her hands on. "No, Anne, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to give that impression, you all. I should have let you sleep alone, laid the other way, or so many other things. You came here for comfort, and I didn't mean to take advantage of that. Marco really hadn't meant to do that, and he had been shocked when the woman moved closer and laid an arm over him, obviously in a caring and loving manner. It had felt nice, he had to admit, that Marco never really getting close with others or having someone to share his bed with. He had been shocked though, and had never given off any adoring or loving feelings or aura to him, and Marco hadn't either, in a romantic matter at least. He viewed the woman as a sister, no romantic feelings. And had also just been here for a short time. He didn't want anyone to think he took advantage of the distraught woman. You've done nothing wrong, and don't feel bad for a mistake I made, Iwa. And moved her head up, using a hand to move her hair away from her face, giving a sniffle as her eyes were somewhat red, obviously upset. Not that Marco could blame her. He had reminded her of the man she loved, Luffy's father, the man she had lost. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep, Marco. It's your bed. I should have realized Sabo's gone. I didn't know why I thought that he was there. I haven't dreamed about him for a while. I thought this was a bad dream that he and cut off as she let out a small sob, moving her head down again and shaking her head, hands on her face. Marco felt like a jerk and an asshole for making and believe Sabo was here, and even worse, reminding her that he was gone. He made and believe all these months had been a bad dream, that Sabo was alive and with her. He had shattered what he was sure was her biggest wish. He moved closer to the woman, putting his hands around her, pulling her into one hand rubbing her back as her head rested on his chest. No, shhh. I'm sorry, Anne. I didn't mean to remind you of Sabo, to upset you or anything, Wa. Everything's fine. It's not your fault. Just let it out. It's fine. Marco had created this mess, so he needed to fix it too. He felt and moving to rest against him, feeling her body shaking as she sobbed at times, feeling his vest getting wet, and still kept her hands on her face, even though Marco couldn't see her face, her long hair shielding her face as it was draped down her back and on his chest, creating a sort of cover. Marco moved himself in a better position, moving his head a bit so it was above Anne's head and her head could rest against his chest, keeping his arms around her as one rubbed her back, her shape shaking as she wept. Just relax, Anne. It's okay, I didn't mean to upset you, Iwa. He felt and shake her head somewhat, hiccuping as she tried to speak. Sorry. I didn't mean to do this. Marco took a breath. No, this is my fault, and don't feel bad for being emotional, Iwa. You have every right to be. I am the one who messed up. And had absolutely no reason to apologize. None of this was her fault. Marco sat and slowly comforted the distressed woman, giving words of comfort now and then, hoping to help calm her down. No, I don't know where Marco looked up when he heard someone talking, seeing the door opening and eyes on his way inside, but stopped when he saw him, giving an off as he closed the door again, understanding he shouldn't impose now. Thankfully, the distraction didn't seem to alert, and the woman not moving or reacting. It was good, Marco was sure, and didn't want others to see her like this. He moved his head and looked at the clock on his desk, seeing it was just past 8 in the morning. Aizu was probably looking for Anne, as he was supposed to only have the baby until breakfast, which was now. Everyone was sure and would rush to be with her son again, but the woman wasn't in the best condition to do that. All because of him. He felt guilty, deeply so. He should have thought it over, and not just assume it would be fine. It was about an hour later when he felt and moving, making him remove his arms as Anne sat up and wiped her eyes and face with her hands, seeming more collected, her breathing somewhat raspy and uneven, but that seemed to be it. She sniffed as she used a hand to remove her hair from her face, a bit of it somewhat sticking to her face because of the dampness from her emotional breakdown. How do you feel, Anne? And gave a nod, looking up as she used a hand to wipe under her right eye, her hand staying on her cheek. Why, yeah. I'm sorry for breaking down like that. Marco moved a hand to lay on Anne's back. No, Iwa. This was my wrongdoing. I didn't mean to upset or bring up any distasteful mnemonics, and gave a laugh, somewhat mixed with a sob, a smile growing on her face. That wasn't the reaction he expected. I can't, and gave a small laugh mixed with a sob as she cut off. I don't know what that means. Marco gave a small smile. Mnemonic means emotion or word that aids the mind to bring up memories, Iwa. I didn't mean to make any unwanted memories make you get the wrong idea. And gave a small laugh, her eyes still wet and cheeks red. How did you know that was the word I didn't know? How do you always manage to make me feel better? Marco gave a smile to Anne. I'm good at reading others. You enjoy when a conversation differs, you are. That, and mostly luck. It had Anne laugh again, Marco giving a chuckle too. The woman was hard to read, making him lucky in cheering the woman up. Most didn't like it when he used unfamiliar words he had picked up, and moved her hand to keep her hair away from her face, looking to be in higher spirits. I'm sorry for breaking down like that. Thanks for solacing me. Marco gave a comforting smile. It was nothing, you all. I didn't mean to upset you. You looked like you needed it, from the moment you came here, and that is a word not even I have heard in a while, even less correctly at that. And nodded, a hand swiping over her eye as it watered. I think I needed it. I do feel better now. And that word, Sabo taught me it. I've always enjoyed small wordings like that. They remind me how big the world is. How much I don't know, how much I want to see the world, to feel free from judgment. Marco couldn't help but smile. That might be why the woman stayed on a boat and traveled. Marco moved his hand to Anne's shoulder. Then join us, join the family you are. Join our roaming of the world, see every place that exists. You are a strong woman and you would fit perfectly here, both you and Luffy, and blinked at him, opening and closing her mouth a few times, before Marco shook his head. You don't need to answer now, you all. You are still upset. I don't want to take advantage of your emotional state. Making decisions while upset or perturbed isn't wise. Just think it over. And gave a nod, giving a small sniffle. Thank you for all of this. Marco shook his head, standing up. Don't mention it. We should probably head out. I think Aizu is looking for you by now, you all. And blinked and looked at the clock, giving a small gasp as she saw it was almost 9:30. Oh God, it's already so late? I need to get Luffy. The woman turned to head out, and Marco used a hand to stop her for a second. Just before you go. I really didn't mean to bring any bad memories by deceiving you or making you think I was Sabo. And my door is still always open if you need anything. Next time it hopefully won't be as upsetting. And gave a sheepish smile. It's fine, really, but thank you, Marco. You're a good man. Marco gave a clap to Anne's back, and they headed out, going to the galley as both of them hadn't eaten yet, and it looked like Aizu and Thatch was there with Luffy. When they got through the door, Anne almost ran over to the table Luffy was at, lifting the screeching baby that looked happy to see his mother. They had never been apart before. Luffy, how are you? Were you nice to Aizu and Thatch? The two in question nodded. He was an angel, started Aizu. A bit upset at the start, but he has been amazing. We just finished breakfast, and nodded as she had Luffy on his head, sitting down. How did he sleep? Did he wake up? Was he upset? Or scared? Or hungry? Or Anne? Aizu held his hand up as he stopped the woman's rambling. He was fine. Woke up once around 3 and was hungry. He slept like an angel aside from that. Woke up at around 7, and now we're here, and nodded, giving a sheepish smile. Sorry, I've never been away from him. I'm glad it went fine. I hope he wasn't a hassle. Both Aizu and Thatch waved their hands, the chef speaking. Oh no. He has been such an angel. Don't be afraid to ask us to watch him again. And smiled as she nodded. She probably wouldn't in the nearest future, but Marco hoped she would take that offer. The woman needed a break time to time too. And gave a hum, lifting Luffy as she headed for the exit. You need a change, my little angel. Well, Luffy had eaten a bit ago, and it went through fast since babies didn't have a fully developed stomach or intestines. When Marco sat down at the table, a hand was instantly tugging his vest hard, seeing Aizu holding it in a death grip as he gave a murderous look to him. Now to you, what the hell did you do? She sounded heartbroken. Why was she crying? Marco held his hands up in surrender. I messed up, you all. I didn't think what became a mistake through. All of them on the table blinked, even Pops as he had a frown. What happened, son? Aizu said and was crying. You usually think things through, you're not the one to make rash decisions. The first commander was on his way to answer, when Aizu tugged on his vest harder, hand inching towards his gun, a look full of fury at him. If you did what I think you did, we're gonna need a new first commander. Marco gave a disgusted look as he swatted Aizu's hand away. I would never take advantage of anyone like that. I might be a pirate, but have some faith in me. And stop pulling, you're going to rip my vest. Aiza sighed. If you had, I would have thought you had gone insane. You don't take advantage of others, it's not like you. What happened then? What had her sounding so heartbroken as she sobbed? Marco sighed. She came yesterday evening, about an hour after you took Luffy you all, and said she felt lonely and a bit on edge since she has never been away from Luffy. It was clear she was upset, so I invited her into my room to relax and have company. Marco felt Aiza look at him sternly, making him give a wave to the man. We just spoke, you all. Relax. That had the cross-dresser take a breath so he could continue without being looked at like he was going to be murdered. We just spoke. I was doing some paperwork as I chatted with her. After an hour or so, she fell asleep. She looked relaxed. I think having Luffy safe with others have her sleep better. Anyhow, when I finished my paperwork, feeling tired, I didn't see any harm in also turning in for the night. My bed is big, you all. That had all of them nod, Haruta having a smile. I remember that, before I was chosen for a commander, I did the same. Your bed is really soft. Did she think you had done anything? Aiza sent a glare again and Marco felt a sigh leave him. No, she didn't. I almost wish she had though. That would have been better, you all. That had all of them frowning. What do you mean, son? What happened? Marco sighed, trying to figure out the best way to tell what happened. As Haruta said, not the first time someone have stayed over since they are perturbed, you all. So I didn't think much of it as we had a decent amount of space between us, and we each had our own covers. The woman woke up before me, probably half asleep as she noticed me there, you all. Or she just saw the back of my head. Marco paused, trying to figure out the next part. And? You can't stop now. Marco gave a motion to the other. I'm getting there, I just need to figure out the words, you all. Marco gave a breath. Basically, I found out Sabo had blonde hair. The others looked shocked, before Aiza looked horrified. Oh my God! She thought you were Sabo? That had the others look shocked too. Marco nodded. Yeah, she even, probably still half asleep, cuddled up against me and everything, and telling me she was glad all of this was a bad dream, that Sabo never died. When I noticed her leaning against me lovingly, I spoke up, shattering her last hope and wish. The worst part was that she apologized. Anyway, she was already upset and on edge from not being around Luffy, and to believe everything is fine and suddenly having her last hope shatter, broke the camel's back. She looked shattered and heartbroken as she realized it wasn't real, you all. I did my best in comforting her. And that must have been horrible. Marco agreed with Aizu, wishing he had done things differently. Marco felt somewhat better when Pops moved a hand to him, giving him a pat on his back. You couldn't have known, son. Don't be too hard on yourself. Aizu also gave a nod. Yeah. You didn't mean to upset her. She looked better now, or she looked like herself. You are good at comforting people, Marco. Marco wondered when he had gotten good at that, and why everyone liked his comfort. Marco let out a breath. Over to something happier, you are, I think, and will join us. All of the occupants on the table looked shocked, Pops speaking first. Why do you think that, son? I hope she didn't mention anything for the wrong reasons. Marco shook his head. She mentioned she loves to roam around and wants to see the world, and I told her she could travel with us, join the family, both of them, to see the world. I also added she didn't need to answer now, but to think about it. She looked to be wanting to join us, you all. But I can't say for sure, because of all this. Everyone gave a smile, glad the woman was thinking of joining them, not telling them to shut up when they mentioned it. It was a good sign. They didn't see Ian for a while, the captain not sure if that was a bad thing or not. She had been out a lot the last weeks, and he hoped she didn't retract back because of the accident. Even more so since he didn't want to bring it up with the woman. If she wanted to speak about it, she would start that conversation, and was a strong woman, she really was, but no matter how it seemed, she was still only 17 years old. She was still just a child herself. The captain didn't want to push too much, in case it backfired. No matter how strong Anne was, and she was strong, she was vulnerable, and he didn't want to take advantage of that. When dinner time arrived, the woman went straight into the kitchen, not sitting down with them as she used to. Whitebeard could see Aiza on his way to check on her, but he stopped the 16th commander with his hand. No, she probably needs some space, just for today. Isa sighed as he sat down, nodding. He knew the others weren't glad about this, but today had already been an emotional day for the woman. And he knew Thatch was inside the kitchen, and Whitebeard had full faith that he could handle Anne. They did see Anne leaving half an hour later, heading straight outside, not even a glance to them. When Thatch came out not long after, he said Anne was fine. He didn't notice anything making him think otherwise. The captain was sure she probably just needed some time alone, most likely even a bit embarrassed, and probably somewhat emotional. Everyone did seem to agree with him. As the day moved on, they didn't see Anne, but he did hear she was out at times, but in the back of the ship, seeming to want to be alone. She looked fine, but said she would like a bit of time to herself, no one thankfully pushing that. When supper came, they didn't see Anne in the galley, the captain feeling a bit worried about that. The woman did need food, both for herself and Luffy. Thatch also mentioning Anne was doing fine and slowly eating more and not having stomach aches. When supper was over, the main part where most ate, the captain stayed in the galley, telling himself that he would be until the clock struck 8 p.m., and if he didn't see Anne by then, he would check on her. It was half an hour until that, so he sat and chatted with those who stayed, both people who had duties and ate later, and a few staying with him, which was Marco, Izu, and Haruta. Thatch was still here too, but he always stayed until Anne came, since she had her and Luffy's food a bit to the side. The chef also said it did happen Luffy was fidgety, and got preoccupied with something small, making her late. As most had ventured out of the galley, not much noise was left, just soft talking here and there. There was even a small echo when a loud sound was made. He had never thought the galley was this big. He could even hear Thatch giving out orders in the kitchen, which they didn't usually when the galley was full. It was when the clock was 5 to 8, they saw Anne coming in, holding a somewhat fidgety Luffy, humming to the kid. As the door opened with her, they saw it was raining outside. Well, it was the new world, weather changed every minute at times. It was probably why the small baby seemed fidgety. As the woman got into the kitchen, they could hear Thatch finding the food and placing it as Anne did her best in hushing Luffy, slowly starting to hum a tune, before she started to sing in the same tune. Took you like a shot, thought that I could chase you with a cold evening, let a couple years water down how I'm feeling about you. And every time we talk, every single word builds up to this moment, and I gotta convince myself I don't want it, even though I do. The woman had such a beautiful voice, and she seemed to know many songs, none that he had heard before, and Anne believed her to have made them herself. The song did seem to calm the baby. You could break my heart in two, but when it heals it beats for you. I know it's forward, but it's true. The captain heard something moving, and humming a bit as she did something, either tasting food herself or getting something, before she started up again. I want to hold you when I'm not supposed to. When I'm lying close to someone else. You're stuck in my head and I can't get you out of it. If I could do it all again, I know I'd go back to you. The captain heard the woman round the song up with some humming, before the only sounds being heard was just the occasional humming or singing word, Luffy seeming to have calmed down. The woman was kind-hearted and the captain was sure the song was for Sabo. No matter what, that man would always be Anne's greatest love. They did hear Anne and Thatch chatting a small bit, not hearing about what, but Anne sounded fine. The ones in the galley decided to stay, a few even coming to join them as the weather outside was bad. The captain barely noticed and heading out with a sleeping Luffy. The captain was sure everything would turn out fine, hoping Anne would join them. He did know they were now heading towards Fishman Island, and if the woman would leave, she would probably do that there. They would stay there for 3 days, getting their ship coated so they could head on. If he doesn't hear anything after a day there, he would approach the woman and ask what she thought. When the next day came, the captain felt relieved to see Anne was out with Luffy as normal, talking to others as the day went on, enjoying the good weather today. The woman looked fine, and had even conversed with Marco, not seeming bothered by his presence after the accident. The woman didn't look like one who held grudges. As the day moved by, Luffy seeming glad to see all of them and having been in many arms now and then, everyone enjoying the small boy's happy mood. After they had found out, and it had gotten out to everyone and was Luffy's mother, many had started to tell Luffy sentences with the word mommy in it, making the woman unsure at the start, but it seemed normal now. He had told them to not do it when they were at island though, in case, but all of them starting to tell that to the baby, made a heart-rending moment happen, and had a shirt on that had a zipper on her back making it sit well on her body. but her long hair had accidentally gotten tangled in it, and she couldn't do anything as she held Luffy, therefore handing him to Marco, who was next to her, Isa coming to the rescue to get her hair free from the zipper in the least painful manner. There were some small winces and half-painful sounds heard as Isa tried to help get the hair free. And when it was, and giving a relieved breath as she moved her hair with her arms, lifting it and being sure it all was free, a small voice set the entire deck go quiet, and oh my. All of them could just stare as and turned to Luffy, who had his arms stretched towards her, really wanting to go to his mother. MOMMY. The small boy yelled out again, having a small break in the middle, having issues with the word. But it was no doubt on which word it was. The captain saw and moving to her son, moving to lift him with blank eyes, making the small baby happy. Are you started? And before she swallowed. Are you going to start talking now? Make me all sappy and everything? Luffy gave a laugh. Mommy, it had and give out a happy laugh, jing Luffy as the laugh quickly turned to a sob, tears going down her cheeks, having a big smile. And Momai? And gave a sniffle, looking at her child, doing her best to give a smile with blank eyes. What? The smile from and had Luffy give a loud happy screech. Mommy, the baby knew one thing, and that was that word meant something, and it made his mother emotional and happy. Whitebeard watched as and nodded at Luffy, giving out, if one could call it that, a happy sob, moving a hand to her mouth to stifle the sobs that was let out. The others out understood it, and a few even had their own blank eyes with smiles. After a second, and closing her eyes as the captain felt her emotions turn downwards, now sounding heartbroken, giving out sobs. Whitebeard could see Marco also understanding something was wrong and was on his way to comfort the woman, when she fell down to her knees. It had Marco quickly moving down with her, brining arms around her, giving out comforting words. The captain made a motion to make the others go a bit back, not sure why the woman looked and sounded so distressed, not wanting too many around. The first commander gave a look to Izu, and the crossdresser carefully took the small confused baby from Anne's arms, which was yelling out for his mother again and again, now knowing something was wrong. Izu, with a word from Marco he didn't hear, quickly walked away, Izu trying to comfort the baby who was trying to reach for his mother and yelling out for her. The captain was on his way to stand up and help try and console the woman, when she moved both her arms that now was empty and clutched Marco's vest, giving out a heart-wrenching scream with her sobs, going straight to his heart. Why was the woman so distressed by this? Luffy had called her mommy. Most parents loved that. As he was now standing he got it. He got why this made her so distressed. Luffy called her mommy. And was his mother, but she was a single mother. The word most likely had her reminded of her loss, and all that happened yesterday didn't help. Reminded her that Luffy didn't have a father, that she had lost the love of her life. That Luffy would grow up without knowing or meeting his father. Whitebeard was glad Marco got the reason before him, being quick to try and comfort her, the captain hearing him talk comforting to the woman. It's okay, you are. Everything's fine, you're fine, Luffy's fine. Just let it out, be sad Sabo's gone, let it out. Everything is fine. Whitebeard heard Marco give it out as a mantra, one hand stroking her back as the other held around her, doing his best to comfort her. The captain moved to crouch down on the deck beside them, glad to see most had left the deck. He was sure the woman didn't want all of them to see her breaking down. It would just make things worse. Whitebeard moved a hand to lie behind and, holding around her, trying to comfort and help Marco, who was repeating the mantra over and over, and giving out wails at times, all of them going straight to his heart as the woman sounded the most heartbreaking and heart-wrenching he had heard in his life. Whitebeard gave small words out as Marco did, but letting Marco be the main one, him just confirming his words, that everything was fine, and she could be sad and cry all she wanted, that everyone was fine. It took time before the woman calmed down, the captain not sure how long. The woman was still clutching Marco's vest, giving out small sobs between her breaths, Marco still giving out comforting words. After a small bit, the first commander looked at him. Let's head to your room, you all. The captain nodded, standing up as Marco lifted and, giving out comforting words as he did, and moving her head to be in Marco's shoulder, her body shaking with her sobs. They slowly headed to his room, the captain holding the door open so Marco could go inside and move to the bed, sitting down as they had a softer surface, keeping his arms around and, never letting go of the woman, Whitebeard moving to sit beside them, and had her legs on the bed, head in Marco's chest as she sobbed, hair spewed around her, Marco being sure to not pull or sit on it. Whitebeard watched as and slowly calmed down, Marco giving out comforting words calmer, not as a mantra anymore, but as comforting words with small hushings between. When it calmed down enough to stop sobbing, her breath hitching and body shaking as it was ragged, Marco stopped speaking and moved a bit backwards, making Anne's face visible, which was wet and full of sorrow, her moving a hand to trying to move her hair away, but didn't come far as she needed to have her hands on the bed to keep upright. Marco moved his hands to the woman's face, moving her hair out of the way, giving a small shushing sound. Sure, just breathe, you're fine. Everything is fine, you all. And did her best to nod, Marco moving to carefully wipe her cheeks. Just breathe, you all. Follow me. In and out. In and out. That's it, just breathe. The words from Marco helped, and Anne slowly managed to get her breath and bearings back, sounding to be better. After a couple minutes of just breathing calmly with Marco, Anne moved her hands and wiped her face, giving a dry sob, more of a hiccup, covering her eyes for a few seconds, before looking at them, giving a hiccup. I am sorry. I didn't mean to break down like this. Both he and Marco shook their heads, Whitebeard moving a hand to her cheek, giving a comforting smile. You have nothing to apologize about. You are allowed to be as sad as you want, as angry you want, as happy as you want. Never apologize for that. You've lost someone you loved greatly, you have every right to be sad, and nodded, one hand moving to her hair, moving her hand through it. Thank you? I don't know why I broke down, but thank you. Marco shook his head, moving a hand to her cheek, wiping a tear away as it fell. No, it was nothing. And you have all the rights to break down, just as Pop said you are. You never have to thank us for comforting you, Anne. It's our job, just as you comfort Luffy. You are allowed to lose your poise and need some comforting, or solacing as you say. The captain remembered Marco mentioned and liked rare and unusual words. It had the right effect and the woman gave a laugh, getting a smile, and sniffled, taking a deep breath. But really, thank you. I think I needed that. Whitebeard had a feeling the woman had never dealt with Sabo's death, and this was a long time coming. It's fine, Anne, started Whitebeard. Everyone needs to just let it out now and then, just relieve all emotions and feel revitalized. It had and give a small laugh, giving a sniffle as she really looked better. It means a lot. But where is Luffy? Marco patted the woman's leg. He's with Aizu, you are. He got worried for his mother. Anne nodded, having a smile as she rubbed an eye. I know, I didn't mean that. Whitebeard shook his head. It's fine. Luffy is just as strong as his mother, so he will get through this. Anne nodded and looked in higher spirits. He is amazing and strong. Marco nodded. I can see that, you are. He is probably as amazing as Sabo too. He might be gone, but he will never be forgotten. That had and give a watery smile. Yeah, you're right, and shook her head, taking a breath, making her hair fly a bit everywhere. I will go get Luffy. I feel much better now. The two of them nodded, Marco moving a hand to her shoulder. It's fine to be sad, it's healthy, you are. Don't bottle it up inside. Do you want me to join? Whitebeard got why Marco asked, just in case the woman didn't want to be alone. And shook her head. Thanks for offering, but I think I will be fine. I feel tired too and might nap with Luffy. That had all three of them chuckle, Marco patting Anne on her back. That sounds nice. Don't be afraid to get any of us, you are. We are here for you. The woman nodded, giving a smile and thanks, before she took a last breath as she stood up, heading out of the room. When the door closed, Whitebeard heard Marco let out a breath, moving to fall down to his back on the bed, a breath leaving him. The first commander was probably tired himself. That had been a tough situation. The captain moved to sit beside his son, a hand patting him on his head as he stared at the ceiling. You did good, Marco. Marco let out a puff. Barely. I just noticed before she fell, you all. She has such a burden. Whitebeard nodded. She has. But that's why we are here, to help her with it. I still remember your first year here. Marco chuckled at that. Marco had had a burden himself, watching his family die in a shooting, him surviving because of his phoenix powers, no seastone bullet used. Marco had been so shut off at the start, before he opened, and they all helped him. Marco sighed. And is still so amazing, you are. I really hope she will stay. Whitebeard chuckled. Don't you mean loiter around? Marco gave a laugh at that, lifting an eyebrow. I see it's not only me who brushed up on words, you are. The captain laughed as he also laid down in the bed, keeping his legs on the ground though. How could I not? It makes her happy, and it's funny to confuse others. Marco chuckled, giving a breath as he relaxed. I'm going to sleep here for a bit, you are. Whitebeard nodded as he stared up at the ceiling. You can stay as long as you like. He barely heard an affirmative sound from Marco as he fell asleep. Even after all of this, all that had just happened, he felt he had gotten further with the woman. He hoped the woman would stay too. When Whitebeard left his room after a bit, letting Marco sleep, he calmed everyone and said and was fine, and to not bring this up, mentioning her being a single mother was a sore topic for her. He didn't tell why. I'm sure not everyone knew the father had died and had been her love of her life. They didn't see in the rest of the evening, but when Isa came out, the crossdresser said and had been with him for a couple hours, before leaving for her room, looking much better. The 16th commander also mentioned Luffy had babbled away, saying a bunch of nonsense, making him smile, the baby trying to comfort the woman too. Whitebeard was sure everything would be fine, it would just take a bit of time. They did see Luffy and the next day, and looking fine, and Luffy was babbling away at times, especially when he was talked to. He just hoped and would stay with them. Isa gave a breath, just getting to his room as supper was over, having an idea he wanted to get down on paper. The day had been fine, and looking fine the times he saw her. He had been shocked when she had broken down 2 days ago, and had not hesitated in following Marco's order and taking Luffy away, knowing he somehow made him sad. Marco had explained why, making him feel with the woman. She was so amazing to be dealing with this alone, an amazing mother, and they would do anything in their powers to help her. The past days had been going fine, aside from the breakdown, and being herself and seeming to enjoy being here. As Isa worked, he kept an eye on the clock, knowing he was meeting with Marco at 9, to go over next week's duties as they were thinking of switching a few out. But when the clock was closing in on 8, a knock was on his door. Isa gave a hum as he walked to his door, putting his pencil down as he was drawing some new clothes to make. When he got to his door and opened it, he gave a smile as he saw Anne and Luffy there. Hi, Anne Luffy. What are you doing here? The woman gave a small smile. I just wondered if you have the time, if you could watch Luffy for a small bit. Isa smiled. Of course I can. Why do you need me to watch him, if you don't mind me asking? And wasn't the one to ask them to watch her son, not yet at least, especially in the evening. And gave a sheepish smile. I would like to speak to Whitebeard. Luffy could join, but I think it would be best not to. A bit less distractions, he gets fidgety at times and speaks a lot. Isa hoped and would speak about staying on the boat, or something like that. But he wouldn't ask why the woman wanted to speak to Pops, that wasn't his business. Of course I can watch him. I have a meet-up with Marco in a bit, in his room, which will take a bit of time. Just for when you're done talking and can't find us, I would love to watch him. And looked at him. Are you sure? It won't be a hassle with the meeting and such? Isa shook his head. Of course it won't be a hassle. And if it somehow becomes, which I doubt greatly, I know Thatch is just the commander on back watch. Should it not fit, I will hand him to Thatch. That had and smile. Okay, if it gets too much, just hand him to Thatch. Isa smiled at the woman. She always made sure to repeat what would happen, to be sure she got it right. I will, and gave a smile and a to Luffy's head, making the baby giggle, before she handed the baby to him, before giving a last blow to Luffy. If anything happens, just come get me. I'm not sure how long it will take. He nodded. I will. I also remember his schedule, so no worries. That had and smile, giving a thanks as she gave a small wave to Luffy, before she left. When the woman was gone, he looked at Luffy. What's your mommy going to speak about? Luffy made some babbling noise and a gurgle sound, making the 16th commander chuckle. You don't say? We would love to have you stay here too. Luffy gave more babbles to that, really enjoying making speaking sounds, or babbling as it was called. The baby was just shy of 8 months old, or since he was early born, just above 6 months. Babies love to babble, Izzy getting why and didn't want Luffy with her when she spoke to Pops. Luffy would babble with him. Izzy gives a hum to Luffy as he heads to Marco's room, not seeing any reason to wait, especially as he had Luffy too. When he gave a knock and walked into the room, not waiting since he was expected to be here in just 15 minutes. The first commander gave a curious look to him when he saw eyes ahead Luffy. "Hello Luffy, how are you doing? Is your mother fine, Yua?" The baby started to babble and giving some gurgles, holding his arms out to Marco, making the first commander take the babbling baby, making Luffy happy and slowly quieting down as he started playing with Marco's vest. The first commander then looks at him. "Where's N?" Isa smiled. "She's speaking to Pops, said she didn't want Luffy there, so it's probably about something important." Marco gave a thoughtful look. "Hopefully, it's going to be about a topic we're all waiting to hear, Yua." Isa nodded and hoped for the same, hoping it would make all of them happy. Izu and Marco slowly sat down and went over what they needed to, Luffy piping in at times, being just adorable, and took a breath, doing her best in preparing herself for this, knowing she needed to. She couldn't continue to go around the bush. She carefully lifted her hand and knocked at the door in front of her, knowing she had looks from others at her back. It didn't take long before she heard her come in, making her slowly open the door. And, what a lovely surprise! She did her best to give a smile, closing the door behind her, trying to look confident and not how nervous she was. "What brings you here this evening?" And took a breath, closing her eyes for a second. "I would like to speak with you." The captain gave her a thoughtful look, motioning to a chair. "Why don't you sit down, and we can have a chat? What would you like to speak about?" And sat down in the chair that was somewhat big for her, trying to figure out how to start this conversation. "I heard from Thatch we're closing in on Fishman Island, which is a good place to set off from, or leave, and such." That had the captain frowning somewhat. "It is. Many do start their journey from there, or from Sabati Archipelago." She knew that, and she liked Fishman Island. They weren't as judgmental as many other places were. When she didn't say anything for a bit, the captain moved a hand to her shoulder. "Why do you bring this up, Anne? You look troubled." Troubled was putting it mildly. She couldn't find a word that fit with how worried and anxious she was, scared of what she might be told, and let out a breath, figuring she should just ask. "It's just when I first got here, you said I could choose between staying or leaving when we got to an island where the latter was possible." She stopped as this was much harder than she had thought, the captain giving a nod to her. "I did say that." "Is that why you are here?" And nodded. That was why she wanted to speak with the captain. She tried to take comfort from the hand on her shoulder or finger more like it, hoping it meant something. "Yes. I wondered about if that offer is still up." That did not sound like a question, and feeling scared what the answer would be, the captain gave a nod. "It is," he said, seeming calm as usual, hands still on her shoulder, which made her more confident in her next words. Iwa and cut of as she took a breath, wanting to take a different approach. "If it would be okay, I would like to stay there," she said it, making her give a breath as she closed her eyes, preparing herself for the answer. When the hand moved away from her shoulder, she felt her heart drop. However, the hand was soon under her chin, tilting her head upwards, the woman not sure when she had moved her head downwards. When she opened her eyes, the hand staying under her chin, her eyes fell on a soothing look. "Why do you look so troubled about this? I would never take back or change an offer. I always mean what I say." And blinked. Does that mean?" And wasn't sure what to say. The captain nodded, keeping the soothing look. "Yes, it does. You can stay." And wasn't sure what to do now, not really having expected that. Whitebeard kept his hand under her chin, moving his thumb to stroke her cheek, her now noticing a tear had fallen from her eye and he wiped it away. "Why do you seem so distraught, Anne?" The captain's calm voice helped calm her nervousness, and gave a breath, shaking her head as she put it in her hands, the captain's hand moving a bit away. "I don't know. Honestly. The last weeks have just been tough. Especially the last days." When she lifted her head and moved her hair away, the captain gave a soothing smile, his hand moving to caress her cheek. "I can understand that. A lot has happened. Both good and bad." Marco also told what had happened 4 days ago. He felt bad for accidentally deceiving you. And gave a small laugh, feeling better. Marco was understanding of it. "It was somewhat my fault too. Although, after all of it, it helped me make a decision." Whitebeard gave a smile. "I'm glad it did. Marco can often help shed light on things. Is that the only thing that made you choose?" And shook her head. "No. It's just everything. How everyone has been so nice, both to me and Luffy." It was just the push I needed, the thing 2 days ago too. The captain smiled. That makes me glad. All we want is for you to be happy. Where is Luffy, by the way? And chuckled. Luffy's with Aizu. He's babbling so much now. It's adorable, but can be a bit much. The captain chuckled. I have heard so. He seems to be a chatty one. He looks happy. And nodded. He is. And I'm sure that is all Sabo would have wanted, for us to be happy and safe. An understanding look was given to her. I am sure of that myself. And if I may, what did Sabo look like? Luffy looks a bit like you, but not completely. And gave a sheepish smile, a hand moving to her chest, trying to think if she could do this. She closed her eyes for a second, before she moved to bring the locket out, moving it over her head, before opening it. She never showed this to anyone, her last and only memory of Sabo. This was also her favorite picture of her and Sabo, the reason she had it, and always had it on her. Taken just a week before he died, his initials and date of his death carved into the locket too. She carefully moved the open locket to Whitebeard's hand, the man looking at it before he smiled. Luffy has his eyes. He looks like an amazing man, a good man. I'm sure he would have been proud of you, for all you've sacrificed for Luffy, and gave a weak smile as she took her locket back and put it over her head again. I try and think that myself. Luffy is he's my everything. A comforting touch to her shoulder was given when she let out a breath. I can clearly see that, and you would do anything for Luffy, and I would do anything for you. You're my daughter now, Luffy, my first grandson. And gave a chuckle. I like the sound of that. But could we not tell yet? I would like a bit of time to relax and calm down. Whitebeard gave a smile. Of course. You can decide when. But know that we all love you, and that will never change, and nodded, moving her head to lean on the hand there, closing her eyes. She felt happy here. She had just been scared the captain would say no, and was so happy he had kept his word. After a couple minutes, the man chuckled. This does mean I can call you my daughter, and Luffy my grandson. And chuckled. You do, and I like that. Wouldn't have it any different, Pops. The man laughed, sounding happy, making her smile. She would use some time to get used to all of this, but she was sure she would love every moment of it. She stayed inside the captain's room a bit, just speaking to the man and feeling relieved that she had a place to stay, a place to call home. When she went to get Luffy, not finding him in Aizu's room and heading to Marco's, he was met with 2 smiles. Sir, started Aizu, sounding excited. Do we have a new sister? And chuckled. Of course the 2 would get why she wanted to speak with Whitebeard, Pops. Yeah, that would take time to remember. And nodded. You do. As she had spoken, it didn't even take a second before she was engulfed in a by Aizu, the other being very excited. We need to tell everyone. We have a new sister. And little brother or nephew brother, and smiled, carefully pushing Aizu a bit away, getting a pat on his back from Marco. Thank you, she started. But don't tell everyone yet. I would like a day or 2 to just breathe. The 2 looked understanding. Of course. Started Marco, having an understanding look. A lot has happened in the last days. Just take your time and relax, Yuwa. She nodded and smiled, glad the 2 were so understanding and nice. She did stay with the 2 for about half an hour, before she took Luffy and went to her room for the night, Luffy falling asleep at once, and not far behind. She felt much better than she had in a long while, and decided, with the help of White Pops, she really needed to get used to that. She had, with the help of Pops, decided to tell everyone during dinner the next day, everyone being excited to have her join, just being happy words, pats on her back, and for a couple hours. It felt so good to just have people who accepted her. Things had now calmed down, although Thatch said they would celebrate it tomorrow, when they got to Fishman Island, and she was sure that would be a party. The Whitebeards was known for their parties. As she sat at a table in the galley, Luffy in her lap as he had just eaten and was now getting drowsy, Haruta moved and sat down next to her, looking at her excited. So, started Haruta, looking at Anne. Now that you've joined, when and where are you going to take your tattoo? And blinked, trying to think of how to respond. I won't take a tattoo yet. Before she could continue that, Rikuyo gave a frown. What do you mean? We all have one. It's what tells everyone you're really in our family. And took a breath, seeing everyone looking at her with different looks, most of them annoyed or offended, which she got. I agree, started Aizu. It helps you be safe too. Many go around telling they're a part of our family, lying of it as they don't have a mark. And wasn't lying, she wanted to be here, wanted to be in this family. She just hoped everyone would understand why she wouldn't get a tattoo right away. And moved Luffy in a better position, the small baby almost asleep. I can't take one as long as I'm breastfeeding. It's harmful for the baby. That had all of them blink. Really? Asked Haruta, and when Anne was on her way to say yes, Thatch was suddenly there and put a plate down with a nutritional drink for her. Yes, she is right. The ink isn't just on the skin, it goes into the blood and taints the milk. Now stop giving her a hard time. And gave a smile to Thatch, taking the glass. Thank you, Thatch. It was both a thanks for the glass, and the help defending why she wouldn't take a tattoo now. The ones at the table gave a sheepish look to Anne. Sorry, Anne, started Haruta. I didn't mean to accidentally sound mean. The others nodded to that, and giving a small smile. It's fine. It's not something everyone knows. Aizu shook his head. Still. How long until it's safe for Luffy? And thought for a second. When he's about 12 months old. When he's no longer dependent on milk. Aizu nodded. That makes sense. Why don't I go get one of our scarves? It's just as much proves you're with us as a tattoo. Even Luffy can get one. And smiled at the 16th commander. I would like that if you could. Aizu waved his hand and said he would love to, before leaving to get it, and staying in the galley and drinking the drink. Thatch has said she needed to as she had, at times, forgotten about it and not drank it. It was a lot of food for her, and she tried to eat and drink so the others wouldn't be worried. But it made her feel better. She really hadn't realized she had eaten too little, and really liked it here. It felt like home. She felt safe and loved, Luffy also loving it here. She would stay here for as long as she could, hopefully till the day she died. She was happy, never having felt this relaxed and loved in forever, not since Sabo was alive and everything was fine. It felt perfect here. When the next day came, and just finishing changing Luffy after breakfast, there was a knock at her door, and quickly buttoning up Luffy's onesie as she opened the door, seeing Thatch there with a grin, holding something up. Please let me have small fun. And gave a sigh as she chuckled. She already knew what it was, and to be honest, it sounded fun, and Luffy would love it. Plus, she did need a shower. And Thatch had been amazing with Luffy the times the chef watched him. She nodded and gave aid to Luffy's head. Fine. I need a shower anyway. That had Thatch light up, taking the small boy. Thank you, Anne. He then looked down at Luffy, smiling. Ready to scare some pirates? Luffy clapped his hands. No! And chuckled. Oh yes you want? You need to learn more words, my little monster. Luffy laughed as he clapped his hands, and giving him a last nuzzle before she left for the shower. Whitebeard sat out in his chair, just having come out of the galley to enjoy what he hoped would stay a sunny day. It also was a calm day. But they were in the middle of two of his controlled islands, so it wasn't surprising. His children were doing their things, the mornings usually being slow and not much to do outside or inside, so most relaxed. But after a bit, he saw Thatch clap his hands as he come from the south side. Okay. So, we have a monster on board. The captain wondered what pranks the man was up with now. It had all their attention, Marco already looking annoyed. Thatch, please you all. It's too early for a prank, and I swear, if you brought a Sea King's head on board you are dead. That had him chuckle. The chef had done the same 4 months ago, and when Marco had asked where, the chef and thrown a Sea King head on the first commander, making Marco annoyed and Thatch whining as he was put on deck cleaning for a month. Thatch waved his hands and shook his head. Oh no. This monster isn't just a monster, but a walking one. Thatch then motioned to the way he had come from, and it wasn't long before Aizu came walking somewhat crouched as he held on Luffy's arms that was in the air, the baby doing his best to walk, but still not able to, and Luffy had on the cutest monster costumes he had seen. It was a light blue one probably to keep it from getting too warm from the sun, dark blue spikes on his back and head, and a dark spot on his stomach. It looked like a small sea monster, the baby giggling as he looked down at his feet, probably liking the movement. It was cute and almost everyone out on deck gave ah and smiled, even Marco who gave a small shake of his head. Are you going to start using Luffy for your pranks, you all? Thatch smiled as he shrugged. I don't know, maybe. He loves the attention and being lifted. It's a win-win, I say. That was kinda true, and it was nowhere as annoying to Marco as his usual ones. When Luffy got more out on deck and looked up, the baby had a big smile and gave a small screech as he saw Marco, trying to move faster, but it only made Aiz lose his grip as Luffy fell down on his hands and knees, not seeming to mind, and crawled over to Marco, who lifted the baby. Why, hello to you too, little monster you are. Luffy laughed as he started to pull on Marco's bright purple vest. Whitebeard looked at Thatch, seeing no and coming after them. Where is Anne? Thatch hummed. Oh, she's taking a shower, she's probably done soon too. We're just watching him. And yes, Marco, and said I could do this. Whitebeard saw Marco giving a sigh as he had opened his mouth to ask about that. Marco shook his head as he looked at Luffy, who was trying his best to pull the vest off Marco, with no luck. If this is going to be the pranks he pulls, I am okay with that, you are. Right, Luffy? The baby giggled when Marco said his name. No. That had all of them laugh, Thatch walking over to them. See Marco. He already knows you will say no, he's a fortune teller. Marco just gave a look to Thatch at that, everyone out laughing. Marco shook his head, moving Luffy towards him. Here. It's usually the captain that handles monster. Right, you are? Whitebeard chuckled and was about to take the baby, when Luffy kicked his feet and moved his arms. No! The little boy in costume yelled, moving his hands to Marco's vest, tugging on it again. Well, it didn't seem like the baby wanted to part with the purple vest, fascinated with the bright color. Marco just shook his head. Fine, you'll be with me then, you are. Luffy seemed happy with that, and when the baby used the vest to drag himself a bit up, it wasn't long before the grabby little hands tugged on Marco's blonde hair, laughing as he did, making Marco try and move the baby away. No, that's not okay, you are. The baby just yelled out a no. Again, not letting go. Whitebeard moved his hand down and lifted the small baby, who turned to a ring he had on his finger, starting to tug on that instead. Marco gave a breath as he moved a hand to massage his head, the baby being strong to just be 8 months old. It did, however, had all of the ones out laugh, especially Thatch. See? It was as you said. The captain deals with monsters. Pops just saved you. That gave the Thatch a glare from the first commander, as everyone laughed as it was sort of true. Marco didn't say anything though, just shaking his head and enjoying how Luffy got annoyed he couldn't move the ring on his finger, using a hand to hit on it. No! Mommy, help! It had them chuckle, Luffy really wanting the ring. As Luffy had spoken, he noticed and coming from the corner, shaking her head. No, Lu. I won't take the captain's ring just because you want it. As Luffy got more mad at the ring not moving, the captain seeing Luffy moving to bite on it, and lifted Luffy, giving a small look. No biting, Luffy? That's not fine. Luffy gave a scream as he moved his hands to the ring he was just parted from, his face going red as he screamed and did his best to toss around in Anne's arms, obviously getting a temper tantrum. Luffy was in the age where those started, he figured. What made this fun was how Anne just handed the screaming and struggling baby to Thatch. Here. You told me to not take him when you dressed him as a captain so he wouldn't get grumpy. So, you now have to deal with grumpy Luffy. That was right, the woman had said that. The chef looked shocked as Luffy instantly started tugging on everything within reach. No, and wait. I didn't mean that. No, stop tugging. That's my hair. Luffy somehow managed to get both his hands to the chef's hair, yelling and face red as he tugged on it, feet kicking him in the chest. I didn't mean this. Help. And just shook her head. Nope. This is what I have to deal with when he's grumpy. Maybe you learn to not tell me to leave him when he needs a nap. Oh, and it will last about 30 minutes, until he's out of energy. It had Thatch look aghast, trying to pry the hands off his hair, the ones out finding it funny how the man struggled with the small baby. A baby with a temper tantrum was almost unbearable to handle, and the chef would realize that now. It didn't take more than a minute for Thatch to look at the woman beside his chair, Luffy keeping his tight grip on his hair. I give. I'm sorry I said that. Please help, and just shook her head, moving to them and lifting Luffy, giving out some shushing sounds as she did, before humming a bit. The baby instantly let go of the blonde hair and moved his hands to Anne. Mommy! When the baby was safe in his mother's arms, Luffy moved his hand towards Thatch, who was trying desperately to fix his hair. No! Thatch gaped. What have I done? Luffy didn't answer and moved to lie against his mother's chest, having calmed down. Mommy, and chuckled, giving out some hums to Luffy. Thatch gaped at them. How is he so calm? And lifted an eyebrow at the chef. I'm his mother. I know how to calm him most times. The reason I try and keep him from getting grumpy or have a temper tantrum. Thatch hung his head. I'm sorry, Ann. I didn't know he was that rowdy and grabby. I won't ask to let him stay when he needs a nap, and nodded, moving Luffy to a better position. Good. She then looked down at Luffy and nuzzled him, making the baby giggle. You are, after all, my little monster. It had all of them smile, glad to see the baby calm down and to see Thatch had, hopefully, learned his lesson. And was such an amazing mother, she knew how to handle Luffy. Whitebeard couldn't be more proud to have her as his daughter. She was a perfect addition to their family, and moved to lift Luffy, who seemed uncomfortable as he gave small cries and kept moving his hands around. When Ann had the 8-month-old in her arms and rocked her arms, it didn't do too much, Luffy starting to get red in the face as he cried louder. Luffy should be starting to fall asleep, so this was a bit unusual, and Ann moved a hand down Luffy's shirt to check for a fever, but frowned more when she felt small bumps. And moved to sit down on her bed, moving Luffy to sit on her lap and lifting his shirt, seeing his back starting to get something that looked like a rash. What was this? It could be why Luffy was being fidgety, and it could be bad, so Ann moved to grab a blanket she put over Luffy, seeing as it was cold out now, and she didn't want Luffy to get sick. As she was halfway to the infirmary, she met Marco, who looked at them in curiosity. Why are you two out, Iwa? Isn't it Luffy's nap time? And gave a small chuckle, seeing as Marco knew Luffy's schedule this well, before she sighed, moving Luffy a bit higher, the small baby still giving out uncomfortable noises. Luffy seems to have gotten a sort of rash that bothers him. Marco gave a frown at that, moving to look at Luffy as he moved the blanket a bit away. Is it small red dots? It could be chickenpox, Iwa. And blinked, feeling worried as she didn't know what that was. Yes, his back has many red bumps. Is it dangerous? She had heard about the swine flu, which was lethal. Marco chuckled. No, Iwa, it's something you get once in your life, and it's best to get it as a baby. It's much more dangerous as an adult if left untreated. If it is, Luffy will be fine, just itchy for a while. You should still head to Bay. It can, but unlikely, be something else. And gave a breath. That's good, I hope it's nothing dangerous. Marco chuckled. No matter what, Luffy will be fine. Come see me after, okay, Iwa? If he has the chickenpox, I need to inform everyone so we know who haven't had it, and they should be away from Luffy until he's better. And nodded, giving a smile. Of course. Would it be bad if it's chickenpox? I don't want to cause any trouble. Marco shook his head. It won't be any trouble. Almost every child has this, and parents have to deal with it, and it's not dangerous for your child, Iwa. The only ones it's really dangerous for are pregnant women. Adults might get a bit more sick, throwing up, fever, and if ignored in doing labor, it can cause seizures in rare occasions. And nodded. Okay, I will tell you after Bay has looked at him. Thanks for calming me. Marco chuckled, moving to clap her on her back. It's nothing. Every mother is worried for their baby, Iwa. You're doing an amazing job. And gave a nod and a smile, before giving a goodbye as she headed on towards the infirmary. When she moved into the infirmary, it seemed to be calm as a few nurses sat and played cards on a table, a few reading things and seeming to readying things for injections, probably in case, and standing at a counter was Bay, who looked up when she came through the door, the doctor closing a drawer as she moved towards her. And Luffy, what brings you here? And exhaled, moving the blanket a bit away from Luffy as the baby had a somewhat of a red face, more likely silently crying as he fidgeted. Luffy got some rash that seems to be bothering him. Bay nodded, moving a hand to Luffy as the baby looked at the doctor. Hello Luffy, how are you? The baby gave a few cries, now seeming tired, but still uncomfortable. Can I look at you? Asked Bay and moved her hands towards Luffy, who just moved to hold and more, giving out small cries, making and sigh. His nap time is now, but he's too uncomfortable to sleep. Bay nodded. Babies are like that, always trust their mothers, especially when uncomfortable and tired. Let's move to a bed, and he can sit in your lap. That was a good idea, and then moved to a bed and sat down, Bay close behind as she put on some gloves. When Anne was seated in the bed, she moved Luffy to sit on her lap and head rested against her form, a hand moving to lift the shirt Luffy had. I'm not sure how bad it is, but I noticed it was on his back, some spots and bumps. Bay nodded, moving a hand to look at it, before pressing a bit and doing a few things to check the spots, before she sighed. It's chickenpox. Early stage, and the bumps will move everywhere and be itchy. He's going to be fussy for a while as it bothers him. It's not dangerous for a baby, usually, so no worries for Luffy. This is normal and a normal event for parents to deal with. And nodded. Yeah. It's worse as an adult, and mostly dangerous to pregnant women. Bay nodded with a raised eyebrow to her, making him chuckle. Ran into Marco on my way here, he told it's most likely chickenpox, and calmed me down as he said what it was. Bay nodded. Sounds like Marco. Let me get some ointment. I don't have much as chickenpox hasn't really been a thing of relevance here, but it should last until we get to an island. A small layer on where the spots are and a few inches around them. The usual for ointments, not in eyes, mouth, or wounds. And nodded. Okay. How often? Bay hummed. Once every 4 to 5 hours. After a warm bath can help keep the effect longer, and try and plan it half an hour before naps and sleep, to calm him. And nodded, going to be sure and do her best to do that, wanting Luffy to sleep so he didn't get grumpy. She then headed out again, and was going to head for her room, when she spotted Marco and headed over, and then sighed as she looked at Marco. It's chickenpox. Marco nodded. I guess that you are. I will tell Pops and the commanders for them to ask the divisions if anyone hasn't had it. Until then, try not to run around into every room, and gave a gasp. But Marco! We love running into every room and touching everything, she said with sarcasm, making Marco laugh, and then chuckle too. We won't, not that we usually do. He's still taking a nap now, so we won't be out for a couple hours. Marco nodded. That's true. I'll come by after I've spoken with the others, Iwa. And nodded. Sounds good. See you then, Marco. The first commander gave a nod and a goodbye as Anne left back to her room. As Anne sat down in her bed and moved the blanket away, she took Luffy's clothes off so he sat in his diaper, giving a sigh as Luffy had spots from his shoulder to his toes, and hoping the spots wouldn't move to his face. She had a feeling that would just make him more uncomfortable. She then put some ointment on her hands and started to carefully rub it on Luffy's body where there were spots, moving carefully and using time to be sure the ointment got into the skin, and started with Luffy's back and front, before moving downwards, and when she started on Luffy's legs, it seemed to start working as Luffy stopped being fidgety and almost falling asleep sitting on her lap, making him move a bit quicker on his legs, before placing him down in his crib, not putting clothes on, but giving an extra blanket, as the ointment was somewhat sticky and didn't want to have clothes sit on Luffy's skin and make him more uncomfortable. As Luffy was down in his crib, and moved back to sit on her bed, a hand rocking the crib, looking at the clock and thinking when to wake Luffy, seeing as he was late for his nap, and didn't want to change his entire daily routine. She figured she could let Luffy sleep a bit longer, and let him be a bit longer awake before his next nap, but wake him at the same time. That should go fine. And looked at her baby that was asleep, a calm look on his face, the woman seeing a couple spots on his neck barely visible. It looked much worse than what it was, and then was glad she had someone to help her keep Luffy healthy and tell what was wrong with him. Chickenpox was apparently something parents usually dealt with, and moved a hand to her cheek, moving her eyes to look up as she suddenly felt emotional. Every parent should deal with this, and yet, here she was, alone. Luffy had just one parent that could watch him, not like other children who had two. And wished it was as Marco and Bay said, that this was something parents deal with, not just her alone. She really wished Sabo could be here and experience what being a father was like, and closed her eyes and took a breath, trying to gather herself again. And moved her hand to wipe an eye, and as she did, she looked at the door when it opened, seeing Isa coming inside. Hey and whoa, hey honey? What's up? And shook her head, moving her hands to dry her eyes, Isa quickly being beside her, looking worried at her. Did something happen with Luffy? Did he get more sick? And shook her head, feeling her eyes well up with tears again. No. It's just something Marco and Bay said. It's chickenpox, something parents usually have to deal with when their child gets it. But yet Sabo will never do it. Isa was quick to move his hands around her, bringing her into a. Oh, honey. I know, they shouldn't have said it like that. And I'm sure if he could have, Sabo would have been here right with you, supporting you. And I am sure he's watching over you, being so proud of you, and how amazing you are. And nodded, taking the comfort from the other, feeling she really needed this. When Isa let go of her, she dried her cheeks. This is probably stupid. Isa shook his head. No. It's not, don't even think that. They did wrong. Luffy will be fine, and you will be fine. And nodded as she sniffed. Yeah. Thank you? Isa shook his head and sat down next to her. Now, what else did Bay say? And sighed before she went over what Bay had said, what she should do, and Isa nodded. If a warm bath helps, would your powers help? And blinked. She hadn't thought of that. Maybe, I will try it out later. Isa nodded at her. Good. Are you sure you're okay? And nodded, giving a smile. Yeah, I am. Thank you for stopping by. Isa shook his head. No, it was nothing. See you later. And nodded. Yeah. Bye. Isa then left, and then turned to look at her sleeping angel. Marco frowned when he saw Izu, who should have been back some minutes ago, as he had said himself, but he had suddenly just been gone. Izu, where have you been, Iwa? You said you would just be gone a minute. Have you talked to your division yet? The crossdresser gave a sigh, before giving a stern look to him, making Marco feel like he was in trouble. No, I haven't. For your information, Mr. First Commander, I have been with and for the last hour. And why? Continued Isa quickly, so Marco couldn't respond, is because someone said chickenpox is something all parents deal with. All parents, plural. Leaving in somber and mournful, seeing as Luffy doesn't have parents, he has a parent. He has the most amazing mother there is, singular parent, not plural. Marco sighed, moving a hand to his face. Of course, I shouldn't have said it like that, Iwa. Isa sighed. No, you shouldn't have. But Bay also said the same, which probably didn't make it easier. It probably didn't. Marco gave a sigh. I will apologize to her, Iwa. Isa hummed. I don't think you should. Not to remind her more of it. She is a strong woman. And really was. The day went by fine, and staying a bit away from everyone, but most had chickenpox. A few didn't know if they had it, and therefore stayed further away. But after 3 days, it seemed Vista had contracted the disease, which was a bit bad. And a few others from different divisions soon also showed signs. They had docked yesterday, and Bay had gotten some more ointment for everyone, and had also offered to apply the ointment on their arms and backs, as she had found out her powers made the itching lessen much more, and everyone was really thankful for that. But what was adorable when she did this, was how Luffy seemed jealous and cried for his mother, who was currently helping Linda with the ointment. Yes, Luffy. I'm coming. She then finished up and went over to Luffy and lifted him, who still cried a bit, probably uncomfortable. He was sick after all. It then lasted for another 5 days, before they all got better and the itching was gone, which was good. He also knew chickenpox in adults could be shingles, but it didn't seem like anyone got that. Which also was good. The next week went by fine, and when it had passed, Marco stood out on deck, which was quiet. They had a big party last night, the first one in a while because of Luffy, not wanting to have one around a small baby, but and had said it was fine, as long as they did it after Luffy fell asleep, which was fine, and did also ask if she could join, not having really had any parties, and they said it was fine and they decided to have Rikuo watch Luffy, so and could join. Luffy would sleep anyhow, but as the clock closed in on 8 a.m., Marco looked at Thatch, who came from around the corner, holding a hand to his head, looking to have a killer hangover. How do you feel, Iwa? The chef groaned. Awful. Why did I drink so much? Marco chuckled. He was glad he didn't get hangovers. Marco turned to look to his left when he heard someone coming towards them, seeing Isa walking with a hand on his head too. I know, it's been so long since I got that drunk. I still feel nauseous. Thatch nodded. Yeah. I wonder how Ann is though, she got real wasted. Marco had seen that. She probably hasn't drank any alcohol for a while, Iwa. Or at all possibly, she is only 18. Thatch gave a groan. What if this was her first time drinking? Imagine how awful she must feel. Maybe we should check on her? Marco got the two were worried, but and might want the morning to relax if she was hungover. Yo! How are you feeling? They all turned to look right, seeing Ann there with a smile, looking completely fine. Okay, the normal, hungover, answered Thatch, looking shocked. And chuckled. No wonder. You got drunk. Isa sent a look at him, before looking at Ann. Yeah, we had fun. How? Ann held a finger up. Hold that thought. The woman then moved to the railing and leaned a bit over it as she threw up, before leaning back and wiping her mouth a bit as she looked at them. What did you say? Isa blinked. Did you just throw up? People usually are bothered by that. And snorted. Try being pregnant. I threw up every day for almost 3 months. After a while, it becomes just meh. I don't like it, but it's just puke. Marco gave an understanding look to the woman. You got the bad morning sickness, you are? Some do that. And nodded. Yeah. No idea why they call it morning sickness. It was during the entire day. Marco chuckled. You are right, you are. I don't know why it's called morning sickness either. Did it start about your 3rd month? And gave a curious look to him. 3.5 months along the way. How did you know? Marco chuckled. I worked at this island before and helped the doctors and nurses. I've seen my share of pregnancies, both good and bad, Iwa. I always felt bad for those who got pelvic pain. That sounded awful, Iwa. And nodded. I didn't have that. I was just throwing up. Thatch moved a hand out. Okay. Pause. Are you not hungover? And shrugged. I don't really get the usual headache and stuff. I think my fruit helps with that. At least that's my theory. Marco nodded. That made sense. They then continued the day quietly. Ann had said she was thinking of getting Luffy, but decided to wait until Recreo came with him when he woke by himself, and not be woken up. When it was nearing 9, Recreo came out with Luffy, them being in the galley, and Ann met them halfway, asking how it had gone, and Recreo said he slept all night, which was good. The next weeks then passed fine, and one day, Ann didn't show up in the galley at breakfast, which had him go and check on her. She was usually up early. So when Marco got to her door, Marco moved to knock on Ann's door, opening it when he heard her come in. When he opened the door, Ann was sitting at her desk, doing something, while Luffy was asleep in his crib. Marco, started Ann. What brings you by? Marco hummed. Breakfast, it's 9 a.m. And blinked. Oh. It's already so late. Marco nodded. Yeah. What are you doing, you all? And let out a breath. It's probably stupid, but Sabo and I used to make these paper roses, and I thought maybe I should make them and let them out in the sea. He always wanted to be out on sea. Marco shook his head a bit as he walked into the room, moving a hand to Ann's shoulder. That's not stupid, you all. You should do it. If you need anything, tell me and I will do my best. Ann nodded before she sighed. I don't really remember how I made the roses. Sabo was the best at it, that's why I didn't notice the time. Marco nodded. Can I have a look, you all? Ann nodded. Yeah, sure. Marco then grabbed a paper, and did his best to make a rose, and when he was done, Ann blinked. That looks nice. But the one we made had more of a middle and a small stem. Marco nodded and tried again. He had really enjoyed making things some years ago, and tried to make it a bit different. When he was done, Ann blinked. That looks perfect. How did you do that? Marco chuckled. Here, I can show you, but maybe you should wake Luffy? Ann blinked. Oh. Yes, I should. I can hand him to Izu and he can feed him. Marco nodded, and that sounded good. This could take a bit of time, and then woke up Luffy, before she headed out and came back after a few minutes. Izu said it was fine? Marco nodded. Good. Here, let me show you how you make roses, Iwa. Ann nodded and sat down, and Marco made a rose and said each step and did it slowly, and concentrating on it. When he was done, Ann did her best to make one too, and made a decent one. Good. Use a bit more force when you fold, Iwa. Ann nodded and did it again, and this one looked really nice. Good. Ann nodded, giving a smile to him. Thank you for helping me. Marco shook his head, moving a hand to her shoulder. No, it's nothing. I want to help you all. When are you placing them in the sea? And sighed. I want to do it tomorrow. That's when it has been a year since. Marco nodded. I get it. We can do that. I can follow you to the lower part of the deck and you can place them, you all. And blinked. Lower decks? How close to the sea is that? Marco nodded. It is down by the sea, we have boats that set out from there. I want you to do this, Iwa. And nodded. Yeah. It would be like a memorial. Marco nodded. Yes. You should bring Luffy, Iwa. And gave a slow nod. Yeah, I should. Thank you for helping me. I really appreciate it. Marco smiled as he shook his head. No, it's nothing, Iwa. Want to head out to Luffy? And nodded. Yeah, we should. They then headed out and went to Luffy, who was done eating now and was babbling. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. They all liked Luffy. Marco would be sure to be there for and tomorrow and help her do this. He did tell to the others that he would help and with something tomorrow, and to not bother, and if she didn't want to be much out, telling it was the day Sabo had died and they were doing a small memorial. Everyone seemed to understand that, which was good, and sighed as she sat by her desk. She had just made about a dozen roses, some in different colors. She was both looking forward to this, and not. She wished she could make roses with Sabo again, not have a memorial with them. But she should do something in memory of him. She then moved to lift Luffy, and waited for Marco to come, trying to preoccupy herself with something. When Marco came by a bit later, he carried Luffy while she carried her roses that she had made. They did meet a few, but it was early. But no one asked what they were doing, which was good. She liked that. She didn't want to explain what she was doing right now. When they got to the lower deck, she was amazed to see it was close to the water. As Marco had said, even a bit of the boat was in the sea, creating a sort of platform. This was perfect. She then moved to sit down and placed her roses beside her, before she moved her hands and grabbed Luffy from Marco, before she handed a rose to Luffy, hoping he wouldn't tear it. Luffy just looked at it, before he flailed his arms a bit, and then grabbed it. No, like this. You place it on the water, and then it sails away. And then did that, watching the rose sail away. She then grabbed another rose and did the same again, wanting to have a bit of time between them. And when she was about to send away the sixth, she handed it to Luffy, who looked at it, before he moved it to the sea. It landed upside down, so she took and turned it around, and watched that sail away with the other roses in the sea. She then handed another to Luffy, and this one landed right side and she watched it sail away. Luffy managed it. Luffy probably didn't understand what he was doing, but it meant a lot to her. She then moved her arms around Luffy, moving her chin to Luffy's head, giving a sniffle. She wasn't crying thankfully, but she wanted to. But not while she had Luffy, she could cry later. She did feel Marco move a hand to her shoulder in comfort, which felt a bit nice. She wasn't alone, she had a family now. She then waited a bit more, before she placed the rest of the roses and watched them float away. She could do this for Sabo. She missed him so much. And moved her eyes to look up. She could cry later. She then just sat there and watched the roses float further and further away. When she couldn't see them anymore, she gave a sigh and stood up with Luffy in her arms. She then gave a smile to Marco. Thank you for doing this with me. Marco shook his head. No, it was nothing. I want to be here for you. We all do, Iwa. And nodded. She knew that and appreciated it a lot. They then headed up to the deck again, before they headed to breakfast as it was early. She then fed Luffy and chatted with the others, trying to be in good spirits. When it was time for Luffy's nap later, she laid him down, and when he was asleep, she moved her head to her hands and gave a small sob. She really did miss Sabo, and so wished he could experience being a father. She then cried for some minutes, before she dried her eyes and tried to do some small duties she had, mostly paperwork as it was something she could do while Luffy slept. It helped keep her mind of this day, and it thankfully passed fine. When Luffy woke, the rest of the day passed fine, no one asking what they had done earlier, but she had a feeling Marco had said it, which was fine by her. The next day then came, and Aizu watched Luffy for his nap, and when they appeared after it, Luffy was standing with the help of Aizu, him holding Luffy's hands in the air and keeping him upright. But then Luffy fell down to the deck as he wiggled out of the hands of Aizu, and Aizu was on his way to lift Luffy, when Luffy moved to his knees and hands, before he stood up, and used a second to hold his balance. It had and move a hand to her mouth, crouching down. Are you going to walk? Luffy didn't answer, seeming to concentrate on standing, before he looked at his mother, and he managed to lean forward, and he fell down, before he tried again, and this time, he managed to take some steps, and just as he was about to fall forward as he leaned too much forward, and caught him. You walked? Luffy laughed. Mommy! And smiled. You walked, my little cutie. Luffy laughed before he leaned his head on N's chest, closing his eyes, making many Luffy really was cute. Whitebeard watched as everyone tried to make Luffy walk again, but he wouldn't, which frustrated N a little bit. But he was still young, just past 11 months now. It was soon his birthday, and they all were so excited for it. They needed to celebrate it, and Whitebeard didn't know how that would go, as all their parties involved booze, which didn't fit for a 1-year-old. But he would see what happened and try to come up with ideas. He should try and dock by an island and then celebrate it. He knew of an island a bit away, and if they had good weather, they could reach it before Luffy's birthday, and then celebrate it. That sounded like a good idea. It was 3 weeks and 4 days later they docked at the island, and it was 2 days until Luffy's birthday, and they did their best to arrange it, and invited everyone they could find, and would hold it in a playground close by, and thankfully, many showed up and they had fun, especially Luffy, who now could walk short distances, and at everything he got, he showed to his mother, who always was close to him. The few times she went a bit away as someone wanted her attention, Luffy was quick in shouting out for her, wanting to be with his mother. Which was normal. It was a good birthday, and they would try and always dock at Luffy's birthday, so he could celebrate it with other children. He needed to be around children as well, not just them. It wasn't good for a child, but for now, things were going fine and everyone loved Luffy and wanted to do their best to help and with the responsibility of a child. He was really proud of his children. Marco saw Luffy moving into the galley, the 2-year-old moving over to them. Uncle Aizu, could you help me make roses? Aizu nodded. Sure, sweetie. Want to do it now? Luffy nodded and brought some papers out and they made roses. They all knew about N's annual memorial, and they supported her with it, but let her do it alone, as she seemed to want to do it alone. But maybe they could help more this year, as Luffy wanted help from them. When N came a bit later, she headed over to them. Luffy, what are you doing? Luffy smiled at his mother. I'm making roses with Uncle Aizu. And blinked. You are? Luffy nodded. I saw you making them and want to make some for you. And smiled, moving and jing Luffy. Thank you, Luffy. Luffy smiled, and then sat down and started to eat while Luffy made roses with Aizu, and didn't seem to mind it, which was good. It was tomorrow she would do the memorial, as she had for the last 2 years. As they were making roses, Luffy looked at Aizu. Could you join us and put them to sea tomorrow? Aizu blinked. Only if your mother agrees. They all then looked at N, who nodded and smiled. Yes, sure, that will be fine. That was good to hear. He would still ask her later if it really was fine, but also knew and would have said no if she was against it. Luffy then smiled even wider and then invited more and more to join, and for all of them to make roses. Which they did, and everyone did ask and if it was fine, and she said it was. When Luffy went for his nap later, now only having one each day, sometimes he didn't sleep at all, he went and spoke with N, and asked if it really was fine they joined, which she smiled at. Yes, I mean, you're my family now. What better memorial can I give than having my and Luffy's family to join? That was a good way to view it. Yes, you are. If you want some private time, you just say so and I will make everyone leave. And chuckled. Thank you, but I'm sure it will go fine. But thanks. Marco nodded before he left with a goodbye. The next day, they were all gathered at the lower decks, even Pops, and they all had their own roses, and Luffy was smiling as he was glad everyone joined. We should do it together. Right, Mom? And nodded. Yes, Luffy, that sounds nice. That was good. Luffy then told everyone to get ready, and they all moved to the sea and let the roses out when Luffy said to do it. And when they had, and moved behind Luffy and get him, holding him close as she watched the roses float away, and smiling with a bit of blank eyes. She did look content, which was good. They then all watched the roses in the waves, everyone being there for Anne. He didn't know for sure, but he had a feeling and was happy with how this turned out. Marco walked with Rikiyo, who was currently pushing Luffy's stroller, the 1-year-old in it. They were on an island and did deserve a small break, so they had headed off to take a trip. As they were walking, Luffy being awake and looking at what he could, The child started to cry. Rakuyo did try to hush the child, but he just continued to cry. But Rakuyo didn't do anything else, making Marco look at him. Aren't you going to lift him, Wa? And doesn't want him to cry. Rakuyo nodded. I know, but at times, they just need to cry. Don't tell him though. Marco nodded. I won't. They then walked a bit, Luffy crying for about 10 minutes, before he fell asleep mid-cry, although it was low. They then went back to the boat wherein met them. How did it go? Rakuyo smiled. Good. He has been an angel, and fell asleep a bit ago. And nodded. Good. They then went on with their day, and when meal time was, which was lunch, and fed Luffy, and Luffy was asleep for the entire ordeal, and when Luffy was done, and blinked as she put Luffy down again in his stroller, before she looked at Rakuyo. What did you do? He didn't wake as he fed, he usually wakes when I lift him. Rakuyo hummed. I just know how to make them sleep. It was probably as Rakuyo had said, he had cried himself to sleep, so he was probably a bit tired. And would never do that. Not that he would tell, and that Rakuyo let Luffy cry for some time. He also knew it wasn't dangerous for a child to cry for being a bit uncomfortable. But he did get and sighed as well. No mother who loved their child wanted them to cry. And was such an amazing mother. Not that those who did let their child cry was worse, as sometimes, a child just cried for no reason. It wasn't dangerous, and sat by a table in the galley, some others with her, as the meal had mostly finished. Luffy was currently asleep in his stroller, the 1.5-year-old always getting tired after eating. As they were just sitting and enjoying themselves, and hummed and looked at the others, remembering something she wanted to say, I am trying to think where to get my tattoo. I'm soon done breastfeeding. Thatch clapped his hands. Yay! You're going to get the tattoo. Finally! How do you want it? And thought for a second. I want it big. Everyone nodded, eyes speaking. How about your stomach? And shook her head. No, there is this scar there. Isa blinked. Perfect, you can cover it up if you don't like it. That was actually a good idea, but still. Maybe. But I think I want something else there, and then the mark somewhere else. But the others looked at her, Marco speaking. But what, Yua? And moved her hand to her shoulder. I think I also want an S on my shoulder, for Sabo. Everyone gave an understanding look, Marco moving his hand to hers that was on the table. That is a really good idea. You should do that, Yua. And gave a small nod. It's not stupid? Everyone blinked, Rakuyo speaking. Who gave you the idea that it was stupid? And shrugged. I don't know. I just thought it was. All of them shook their heads, Isa speaking. It's not. You really should do it. She should. Thatch then looked at the others. Have you told her yet? Every one of the commanders shook their heads and frowned, not sure what this was about. Told me what? Thatch grinned. We want you as a commander. The second space is still vacant. And blinked. They wanted what? She looked at the others, who all had smiles. I mean, thank you for believing in me, but I have to decline. That had their smiles fall. Why? Asked Izu, looking confused. And moved her front a bit backwards and turned her front to look at Luffy in his stroller. Luffy is soon 1.5, he will take a lot. I don't think I can juggle mother and commander, she said as she stroked Luffy's cheek, before she sat back right, and everyone nodded. Okay, said Thatch. I understand. But I do think you would have managed. I mean, you're pretty amazing. All of them nodded and blinked. They thought that? You think that? All of them nodded, Marco speaking. You've fought for yourself for a long time. You fought Pops while in pain. You stood up for yourself and you're a great person and fighter. Much more now that you're not hurting Yua. That was a bit true. She was better now that her abdomen didn't hurt. Can I think about this? Everyone nodded, Thatch speaking. Sure. Think as long as you need. And smiled, that sounded good. They then sat and chatted as normal until Luffy woke, and then moved to lift him and kept him happy until it was dinner. The rest of the day went fine, and when evening came and she was in her room and Luffy asleep, and kept thinking about the commander position. Did she want that? Could she do that? She didn't know, and sat all night thinking about it, and suddenly it was time for breakfast for Luffy. So she headed out into the galley and fed Luffy, and it wasn't long before Marco sat down next to her, giving her a look. You look tired, you all. And blinked. She did? Maybe I didn't sleep. Marco frowned. Why not? Luffy keeping you up, you all? And shook her head. No, the commander thing had me up. Marco blinked. That wasn't what we meant to do, you all. Did you figure anything out? And shook her head. Not really. I need more time. Marco nodded and moved to lift Luffy before she could as Luffy whined, and then Marco sent a look at her. Go sleep. I can take him, you all, and blinked, on her way to say no, when Marco spoke. Not a request, an order. Go sleep, you all. And sighed before she nodded and went to bed, actually falling asleep fairly quickly. She guessed she was tired. Marco turned to look at Aizu when he sat down next to him. Where is Anne? Marco hummed. She was up all night, thinking about the offer to be a commander, you all. I sent her to bed. Aizu nodded and Thatch sat down too, giving a guilty look. I didn't mean to do that when I said it. Marco shook his head. No, it's fine. She would probably have done the same if we asked another time, you all. Thatch nodded, and made a goofy face for Luffy, who laughed. When he stopped, Luffy looked around. Mommy? Said the small child, and Marco shook his head. No, she's sleeping, you all. Luffy looked at him, before he looked around again. Mommy, he yelled out, and it wouldn't do anything as Anne's room was a bit away. She wouldn't hear him. Marco then lifted Luffy from his chair. No, she's sleeping. Luffy then fought against him, starting to wail. Mommy! 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 Wailed the kid, and Marco did his best to hold Luffy and calm him down, but he was really fighting against him, and was always out with Luffy in the morning, never away this early, and it seemed Luffy knew this now, the reason he wanted to go to her. The others then moved to help him contain the small and fighting baby. They didn't really get anywhere as Luffy was wailing and crying out for Anne, and it wasn't until half an hour later, when Pops appeared, Luffy slowly stopped wailing and looked at Pops, who walked over to them and lifted the small baby. You're rowdy this early, child. Luffy did hiccup a bit, but calmed down, and called out for his mother a few times, and Pops looked at them. Where is Anne? Marco let out a breath. Sleeping. We told her about the commander's spot, and she was awake all night, you all. I sent her to bed. Pops nodded and looked at the baby. She will come out later, child. Relax now, you're waking everyone. The baby slowly calmed completely down, before he was back in his seat and started to eat again. Luffy had a appetite. The hours then went by, and when it was noon, Thatch looked at him. Should we maybe wake Anne? Marco shook his head. No, let her sleep, you all. She probably needed the sleep, the reason she hadn't woken up. Then an hour later, Anne came out and moved over to Luffy and lifted her child, who was holding his arms out to her. Mommy, yelled the kid and then smiled at her child. Hi, Luffy. How are you? Luffy moved to lie against her chest. Mommy. She then looked at them as she sat down. How has he been? Thatch hummed. Nice, but he was a nightmare for a bit. And hummed and looked down at her son. Why was that? Luffy didn't answer and just relaxed against him, so Marco spoke. He missed you, you all. And chuckled, moving a hand to caress Luffy's head. You need to get more independent. Luffy did need a bit to do that, but all children were like this at this age, wanting to be with their parents. Pops then looked at Anne. Marco said you were awake thinking about the commander's space. I didn't mean for it to keep you up and brooding and pondering. And shook her head. No, it's fine. I would have anyhow. I am still not sure if I can be both a mother and commander. Pops nodded. I do understand that. Being a mother is tough, but do know we all are here for you and Luffy. And nodded and smiled at her son. I know, we know, and then looked at Aizu. I also thought about what you said, about the placement of the tattoo. I think I don't want it on my stomach, but my back. And then another on my stomach. They all nodded and Marco hummed. I also wonder, is there a reason the scar is vertical and not horizontally? And blinked. You could do it horizontally? Marco nodded. That's the most done one in the last 15 years, just a small, almost faint scar under your abdomen. Both easier on you and the child, you all. And blinked. Oh, I didn't know that. Biggie wasn't really good with pregnancies. That was an explanation. Thatch then clapped his hands. But that doesn't matter if you cover it up with a tattoo, right? and nodded and smiled. Yeah, the next weeks then went by fine, and after a few, and took her tattoos, covering the scar on her stomach, and the mark, and when it had healed, which took a day since she had the Mara no Mi, she came out with a cropped shirt and open back, showing it off, and it had everyone happy. On her stomach, it was a sort of flower, the stem being the scar, which made it almost invisible. She also had taken the mark on her back, and it was magnificent, and it was clear and was proud of it. She also hadn't decided on the commander thing yet, and they hadn't brought it up. But 2 weeks after the tattoo and they were sitting in the galley relaxing, and hummed. So, I've been thinking about the commander thing. Is there possible for me to try it out? Just to see how it feels? Marco nodded. Sure you are. We can do that. You want to try it? And nodded. Yeah, I do. I feel really glad you would want me for it, that you believe in me that much. Pop smiled at that. We do believe in you. You are amazing to be so young. You're only 18, but so skilled. And then looked at Luffy. What do you think, Luffy? Luffy laughed. No. And chuckled. I think I disagree. Luffy blinked. Yes? And nodded. Yes, yes. She then nuzzled towards Luffy, who laughed. And was such an amazing mother. Thatch then moved down and sat next to them, and looked at N. I love the tattoos. What about the other tattoo? The one for your shoulder? And sighed. I want to wait a bit, maybe until the memorial. All of them nodded, Marco moving a hand to her leg. Sounds good, you all. I am glad you decided to try being a commander, though. Thatch gasped. You've decided? And hummed. Half decided. I will try it out and see if I can manage. Thatch nodded. And you will. You're pretty amazing. And smiled, and then she looked at Luffy. And you will be my second hand, won't you? Marco chuckled. While that sounds good, you should pick someone else too, someone who can help until Luffy can, you all, and nodded. I will. He was sure and would think and then choose someone good. Luffy then wiggled out of Anne's arms, before he ran for the exit. I want to play outside. And the child ran out, and Anne chuckled. He's so lively. Luffy was, but all children at age 1.5 were that. And then stood up and headed towards the door. I should be with him. Marco nodded. Okay, I'll come tell you what you need to do in an hour, okay, you all? And nodded. Yes, that sounds good. And then headed out to be with Luffy. He was sure and would be a great commander, and he hoped she would take the offer. But he would get it if she didn't as well. She then got some commander duties, and it seemed like she handled them well, but she still said she didn't want to be a commander full-time, not yet at least, and it was fine for all of them, and sat and watched Luffy play in a sandbox, them having docked a bit earlier, and she wanted to use every opportunity she could to have Luffy around other children. He needed that as well. Marco was also with her, both of them watching the 2-year-old play. Luffy had once gotten some sand in his hood on his hoodie, so Anne went over to help get it off, and as she was, another woman, most likely a mother to one of the children here, spoke to her. He is adorable. How old is he? And hummed. He is 2. The woman blinked. Wow, he looks a bit small. My daughter is also 2, but she isn't that small, and nodded. Luffy is an early-born one. The woman nodded. I see. The birth must have been so easy then, if he wasn't full size, and hummed. It was rough, but I had a C-section, it was needed. But the birth went sort of all right except for that. The woman blinked, before she gave a frown. Then that isn't your son. You didn't give birth. You took a C-section. That's not the same. And blinked. There was a difference. What? The woman gave a disapproving look. Yes, you aren't a mother unless you give birth, and you didn't do that. Did it sound too hard for you? Oh, poor little girl, didn't want some pain? And had no idea what to do or even say, so she just stood shocked. Before she could muster a reply, Marco came and stood beside her. She is an amazing mother, you are. You, on the other hand, are not so judgmental. Please leave us alone. The woman huffed, before she left, taking a young girl with her, most likely her daughter, when she was gone, and looked at Marco. I'm not a mother? Because I didn't give birth? Marco quickly shook his head. No, you are a mother, a proud mother you are. The most amazing mother there is. Ignore those who have a set view on things, you all. They are wrong. And nodded slowly, but still felt a bit unsure. A month later, she had a checkup for Luffy with Bay, and while Luffy was being checked, and spoke slowly. I had a C-section, does that make me less of a mother? She really was unsure. Bay looked at her, before she clicked her tongue. No, it does not. You don't need to give a vaginal birth to be a mother. There are many ways to be a parent. By pregnancy or adoption. Just because your body needed a C-section doesn't make you less of a mother, and I know a few even say you aren't a mother at all, or that you will never have that bond with your child since you had a C-section. You are a mother, an amazing mother. And nodded, feeling better. She had been a bit unsure. Bay then hummed, and if we go by their logic, Pops is not our father. But he is. And nodded, that was true. Yeah, you're right. Bay nodded and looked at her. You are an amazing mother, and no one can take that away from you. And we're now all done. Your son is in full health and all is well. That was good and made her give a relieved sigh. She was always nervous about this, sure something was wrong. Thatch snickered as he got his hands on Luffy, the 2.5-year-old child making some noises as he was walking around in his room while Thatch was finding the things he needed for this. And was currently on the island with Harchua, and Thatch wanted to make Luffy look really nice. So he grabbed some clothes he had bought in secret, a sort of suit for him, which fit perfectly. Luffy did make it a bit hard to get them on, he was a bit difficult at times, making him wonder how Anne managed. But she was so amazing. When he was all done, he clapped his hands and looked at Luffy. Ready to impress your mother? Luffy nodded. Yes. That was good. They then headed out, and when they got to the main deck, everyone gave a mix of ahs, seeing how cute and amazing Luffy looked. When Marco saw him, the first commander did give a small frown and said something about the shirt that seemed a bit familiar. But he couldn't place his finger on it. Probably nothing. Everyone thought Luffy looked amazing, like a little gentleman. When dinner was nearing, they headed to the kitchen, and when it had started, and Haruta came into the galley, and when Luffy noticed it, he gave a loud happy sound as he started to run towards his mother. But when Anne saw Luffy, everyone could see her blinking, before she moved her hands to her face, covering her mouth and nose as her eyes got glassy, brimming with tears. What was wrong? And then swallowed, and it was like she had a lump in her throat. It made Thatch feel really unsure, not sure if he had done anything wrong. It was just clothes, right? When Luffy was near enough, and did lift him up, but her eyes were almost full of tears, barely not falling from her eyes. Luffy gave a blinding smile. Look, Mommy! I have new clothes! And nodded. Why you do, honey? She did stutter, her voice being laced with something that sounded like sadness. Aiza then stepped up towards Anne and held a hand out to Luffy. Hey, Luffy, how about we find some dessert? That instantly had the young child's attention, and headed with the crossdresser. As Anne put Luffy down on the floor and he walked away with Aizu, and moved a hand to her mouth, seeming to hold back tears as she watched her son go. When the door to the kitchen closed as Aizu and Luffy were through, and started to shake, before tears fell from her eyes, Marco was first to move and got her to sit down by their table and comforted her as she broke down. Not nearly as bad as she had before, but she cried. After a minute or two, and dried her tears and more didn't come right away, making him speak up. Anne? Did I do anything wrong with the clothes? And took a shaky breath. And no, it is just they look close to what Sabo used that made them all blink, and then he got it. It reminded her of Sabo. Sabo was still a very sore topic for Anne, she often broke down when that topic was up. He didn't mean for this to happen. He moved a hand to Anne's. I am so sorry, I had no idea. And shook her head. It's okay. But could you change him? I can't. Thatch nodded. Of course. Imma run and grab something else. Then he ran and got some overalls and a shirt, quickly putting Luffy in them. And then it seemed to go better for Anne, which was good. When dinner was over and Anne had left, Marco sighed. That's why it felt familiar, you all. Sabo had those clothes on in her picture. Ah, that made sense. I see. I really didn't mean to. Pop shook his head. You couldn't have known, son. It is all fixed now. It was, which was good. But still, he felt a bit bad. And was still opening up here and there, and hopefully this wouldn't change that. And had a hard past, but she was still going on. Whitebeard sat out on deck, enjoying a good day, and playing with her 2.5-year-old as usual. A bit later, Shanks visited again, and when he saw Luffy, he gasped, "Oh my God! He is so tall!" and chuckled and looked at her son. "Can you show Shanks how tall you are?" With that, Luffy moved his hands up and stretched, and it made Shanks gasp again. "You really are tall." Luffy was so cute. Shanks then took a step towards Luffy, and Luffy responded by hiding behind his mother's legs. He could be shy at times. And to be honest, Shanks didn't always look like the friendliest, but after a bit of time, and also doing her best in being around Shanks, Luffy grew more sure in himself. And the captain also knew and wanted Luffy to remember Shanks for all he had done for her. Which he got. He had really been there for the woman and Sabo, from when he was alive. But again, Luffy was only 2.5, he had a long time to get to know Shanks, and based on how the other captain could be, Whitebeard was sure Luffy would like him. Shanks could be really goofy and weird. But again, he could only hope. Luffy then went off to play some, and Shanks looked at the woman. "I also see you've taken their mark." And nodded. "I have. I love it." "That was good." Shanks nodded. "And I guess the S is for Sabo?" And moved a hand to her shoulder as she nodded. "Yeah, it is. I needed something for him as well." Shanks nodded. "I know, and do remember, he is always looking down at you with a smile." And nodded with a somewhat teary smile. "I know." They then got on some lighter topics, and after some hours, Shanks needed to leave, and then did give a, and when she tried to make Luffy also him, Luffy just hid behind and making her sigh. But he was sure this wasn't the last time Shanks would visit, so when Luffy was older, he would get to know who Shanks was, and to know he knew both Luffy's mother and father a lot, and had helped them, and even helped Luffy. But they would take that when that time came, for now, things were fine for them. And was still such a lovely woman, and she still wasn't a full commander, still only half one. But he knew she would be able to manage being a commander full-time, and felt a bit hesitant, and he would talk to her later about it. But he also got she didn't want to be a full-time commander, as in her mind, it might make her be less around Luffy, and Luffy was still her everything, and she wanted to be there for him. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow himmelblu for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.